I'm Drew, and behind the camera, we have Jack. Tonight, on our premiere episode of the Political Zoo, we're going to be talking about the income inequality and the housing prices that are now plaguing America, along with our new favorite antagonist, BlackRock. We're going to then go into FBI conspiracies.
Yep, we're going to be talking about the involvement of the FBI in a conspiracy back in October of 2020 in the kidnapping conspiracy of Governor Amy Whitmer of Michigan. A lot of crazy details out of BuzzFeed News. Very, very crazy details in the long read. I did it. I analyzed it, and I'm very excited to talk about it today. We also have something else on the table.
Yeah, we're going to go from there into the FBI's possible involvement to the January 6th riot of the Capitol building. And if we have a little bit of time left, we're going to talk about the Cuban refugee crisis of people escaping the communist regime of Cuba, trying to come over to America, and how that could affect the Electoral College and voter suppression. Welcome to the show, everybody. You're going to want to stick around. You're not going to want to miss a thing. Josh, today I saw an article on CNBC about the housing issue right now. If anyone's looking for a house or an apartment, you know exactly how tough it is.
It's pretty crazy. The prices.
It's pretty crazy prices. Analytics has come back, and they firmly claim that minimum wage income in the United States is now not enough to rent the cheapest apartments.
And this was CNBC?
This was CNBC earlier this week.
That's pretty, it's unfortunate that we have to hear it, but at some point it kind of was going to get to that point. You know, when we have issues like housing becoming more difficult, especially after people have been financially hit by COVID-19 and having a hard time either getting back to work or trying to find work in general, or at least before. Now people are having the issue of they just can't afford it. They can't get in.
Yeah. And also the prices are going up. It's making this double-edged sword, this candle burning at two ends, where you're having people making less and everything costing more. This is definitely, when we have friends in our circle that talk about, communism and how we need to, raise minimum wage and we have to do whatever, and how the rich are going to overtake everything. And we always think, yeah, okay, whatever, maybe in a couple of years, but it's starting to happen before our eyes. As someone who leans right, to me, that's something that's wow. We have people who are hardworking that are doing menial jobs that a lot of other people don't want to do. Things like janitorial work, maintenance work, security, things of the nature like food industry, wait staff. Have you heard about the crisis right now as far as restaurant staffing goes?
Yeah, they're having a hard time finding anybody.
They're having a hard time finding, and people are walking out on shift.
I wanted to stick on the point of the minimum wage because we're facing an issue where obviously we have, unfortunately, a locked Congress as far as most issues like this are concerned. They're trying to get crazy bills through reconciliation, and they're imagining that they're going to try and get anything through the Senate. So right now we're faced with the reality of, if minimum wage was raised in the short term, then maybe it could be a short-term Band-Aid. But it's also, these renting complex, and you mentioned BlackRock. BlackRock is more involved in residential housing, like family homes, more than apartments. However, BlackRock has made heavy investments into housing property, personal home property. And their goal is to rent these properties out to people at exorbitant rates. So the apartment issue is definitely there. And now it's even blending into generational wealth transfer between families. It's even harder for families to get in against BlackRock because they make, what 25-year-old couple who's looking for a home has $900,000 in cash to offer for a house. Gracious. And imagine trying to get that loan from the bank.
Correct. Especially on the median income of the United States right now is around $50,000, around $1,000 a week is the median income in the United States right now. So imagine being able to have essentially 2 years' salary to be able to put a payment on a house or get a loan like that. That stuff is really hard to do, especially in today's middle class where we're in the age of entrepreneurship right now, which is kind of a double-edged sword because you have one hand where anyone can do an ultra slim, ultra fast rags to riches story, which isn't that the whole point of America is poor people poor immigrants come over. Not saying that as like a derogatory
No,
term, but
yeah,
you know what
obviously.
I mean?
I
Poor
understand
immigrants,
what you
poor
mean.
people come over. They work their butts off. It's something they're passionate about, and they make enough money to sustain a family and follow their dreams and do things like that. We see that a lot in a lot of restaurants, a lot of Greek, Italian families, Portuguese, especially in the area we're in.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people that come over and they pursue their art of cooking. They pursue
just to clarify, there are a lot of Portuguese
we
restaurants
have a
around
really
us.
large
Very heavy Portuguese population around us. Excellent food. If you've never had Portuguese food, you got to try it.
Got to have the Portuguese steak with the egg and the pepper. Delicious.
Can't forget the pepper.
Oh, of course, yeah. Pepper's the best. But people come over and do that, and now we're at this extremely streamlined, innovated process of the entrepreneurship of this American dream, where if you know how the market works and you know how to manipulate it, not add value to this market, mind you,
just know how to
manipulate it. Know what people are going to do. You can go from someone who makes median to someone who's making $100,000 a year, more than that.
And just me personally, like at some point, for me personally, I have to respect the grind because there are people
100%.
doing a lot more crazier things than like dancing on TikTok or doing anything like that.
And it's not easy. We're not downplaying the effort and the know-how that goes into this entrepreneurial lifestyle. Don't think that we're sitting here saying, all you know how to do is trade NFTs and crypto. That stuff takes a lot of loss, a lot of hands-on experience, and a lot of inside knowledge, not that you get illegally, but stuff that you get by knowing how the market works, knowing how everything works. That's hard. That's a really hard thing to do.
I couldn't get into crypto. That stuff scared the crap out of me.
Crypto's fun,
I let the crypto heads get at that. You guys are doing,
we're out of our golden age. That's
as good or bad as you're doing.
But we're out of our golden age. So we have this ultra fast American dream lifestyle right now, this age of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Everyone can go out and they can become an entrepreneur that makes a lot of money doing something niche on the internet.
Very niche. Yeah, it could be very niche.
Two questions about that. They're both very different branching questions. First one, what are we going to do about the people who, like, either older people who don't have the entrepreneurship, who don't want to pursue that life? What are we going to do to make currency more valuable to them so that way they can afford these houses and be able to buy apartments? And also, do you think that the entrepreneurship is ever going to crash? Is this market going to crash, or how long do you see this going? Two completely different questions. Answer whichever one you'd like to think of first.
So the first thing I want to say is, I apologize. The first thing I want to say is, you mentioned, what are we going to do about the people that are older or maybe not as intuitive about that market? And it's so funny because as you were talking, before I even mentioned that, I wrote down, if you can't, to remind myself to bring that up to you, because I think it's an important lesson. I'm not that great at things like TikTok or anything like that. And there are a majority of people who will not see that dream.
Of course.
So what opportunities, you ask a great question, and I'll answer with, for those people that can't be a part of it, there has to be some type of stable work in the private industry as well as the public sector. Because if you offer foundational work, like, union jobs. My dad was in a union for 32 years, and union work, education, those are the things that you can help push. And not just like college or community college, but technical schools, really understanding how to manage, especially construction sites. I mean, we had a massive infrastructure bill already passed. We have another one trying to get through the pipes of the Senate. And it's a lot of construction. It's a lot of, you may disagree with it or not, but the fact is, it's like, some of it is green climate stuff. It's not the Green New Deal or anything like that. They would never do anything like that. Yeah. But pushing more for solar, wind, the usual center left position. And, I somewhat agree with it. You obviously have to be careful always when you deficit spend, although I feel infrastructure spending, you can make your money back on that, especially with better roads. And Amazon, Amazon, they can maybe one day pay taxes and help support the roads that help, generate all that income. So,
Josh, what does this have to do just with the topic we were just talking about?
Well, because
I think I lost you there.
Because if you can't, you might be an Amazon driver. If you can't get big on TikTok, you're out there slaving 10 hours a day in the Amazon warehouse with no air condition. You're being monitored on your cell phone, your location, your brakes, all that stuff. And if the only solid way to get a profitable lifestyle is to be in this very streamlined, fast pace, bite clips marketplace, then there should, in my view, be stable employment opportunities, so that way the market doesn't get overstimulated or overconsumed in one sector.
Yeah.
This way, the Amazon driver can make good money because they do good work. You guys do good work in the Amazon warehouses.
It would be
so everyone can get in.
Of course, it would be $1 million idea right now. Just
Sell
thinking
it.
about it.
I'll pay $1 million.
With these NFTs, what I was thinking of is the people like NFTs and cryptos. I was thinking of the people who don't have any experience with that. Like you saying, if you don't have cryptos, I'm going to reference my dad. Absolutely love my dad. My father has worked for the same company since I was a child. I was a baby. I don't remember him not working for this company.
Mm-hmm.
COVID came in. COVID shut down. I think the official figure was 30% of businesses that operate, especially seasonal businesses, especially businesses that thrive.
It was over half.
Oh yeah, so even worse. 30% might have just been food.
In the peak of COVID, it was over half.
So it's even worse than what I was thinking. So we have my dad, who is now in his early 60s, about to retire, poised to retire, and now he doesn't have this job that he's been so reliant on, that he's have the skills to do. And I know the first argument, if he has the skills, this job, he can get a job doing something else.
But that's not transferable.
It's not transferable. And also, we have all these other businesses that people are now clamoring to get on. Are you going to hire the guy who's going to retire in 3 years? Or are you going to retire the guy who's 25 and just got a degree?
And you know what? That actually, it's a fact. Bernie Sanders in the Senate, he was trying to push Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to add additional Medicare benefits into the infrastructure bill.
Right.
And a topic about Medicare that has been brought up a lot is like, should the age of Medicare be lowered to like 60, or even, people say 55 if you get it. Obviously, people say Medicare for all. People want Medicare for all different things. But I think like in your dad's situation, like he's 60, that's still you're not, you can still be very productive in society.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I'm not saying like it's like a lame duck situation. I'm just saying because it's really hard to teach an old dog new tricks, especially when you have these entrepreneurial markets where it's like you have to have grown up on the internet to even try to understand some of these things. And that comes back to the $1 million idea I was pitching. If somebody, an entrepreneur probably, can simplify the process of crypto mining, of NFT trading, of day trading, if they can simplify that and break it up into part-time and full-time employment jobs to where people who aren't as fluent in the internet and how that works, you'd be able to hire people to do essentially the work for you, but just pay a cut to these people as employees. And that, if you can figure out how that works, if you can either like ship technology out, like, mining rigs, or teach people how to do certain things and make it simple and easy for people to pick up without having to go to school for degrees, or growing up on the internet, or being that like programmer kid that you've known how to code since you were 12, you will be able to do that. You'll be able to pull in a lot of the people who lost their jobs in this generation that have skills that they can't use in other workplaces because they're all full.
Right.
I'll jump in and say one of the things with that idea is you're basically going to be shipping out technology for crypto mining to people's houses. They're going to be paying electricity on that mining, and the yields per cost of electricity is going to vary drastically based off of your location. So one thing you could do with that is to try to maintain employment. Is it would really target the cheaper electric side of things, but you're also having a very unstable market when it comes to crypto mining, because that's beginning to lock down. You're looking at Ethereum, where they're no longer going to be doing mining anymore. It's going to be they have a different method of
buy.
Also, for those, sorry, just quick interjection. For those of you that don't know, China has banned the use of Bitcoin in cryptocurrency. Crypto mining in China is fully banned, and the CCP has fully enforced that law with local police and federal enforcement.
And that's why everything's
so.
tanky.
If you're involved in crypto, it is totally out of China. So that is obviously going to devalue it. And like what you were saying, Drew, earlier, unless you want to finish, Jack, before I continue, this kind of goes into like, how long is this going to go on for? Because now we see China clamming down.
Second question.
Now we see China clamoring down on Bitcoin. You're seeing kind of the hype of crypto, fortunately or unfortunately, depends how much money you've got in it, has fallen. Elon Musk went on the Tonight Show, I believe, and had that SNL, and he had that quick interview, and it wasn't very favorable. He kind of called it a hustle and didn't legitimize it. And that, an unfortunate part of stocks and crypto is it's all about how people feel. So if people feel like Amazon is going to be a profitable company for the next 10,000 years, because I sure do, they're going to obviously pump up the price of Amazon. They're going to believe in it. And for cryptocurrency, it's the exact same scenario. But there's just one flaw with crypto is there's no good news. Like if you're Amazon, you have quarterly reports. Look how much money we made. We're rolling in it. Look how little taxes we paid. We have so much cash. We can literally launch Jeff Bezos to the moon, or almost to the moon. He went into the upper atmosphere. We just launched him just because. That's how much money they have. And how long does it go on for? It goes on for however long people can hold on. You always see those like hodl memes on Reddit, but like that is kind of true, but like you'll never see the type of, unfortunately, maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably am wrong because I don't know anything about crypto, but it goes for however long people can ride it, just like stocks.
Right.
Amazon's stock price will continue to go up until either they have a drastic blow up in the company, or if the feds or state governments get involved in trying to clamor down on Amazon for things like antitrust issues or for working conditions. There was an article a few weeks ago about Amazon workers having to defecate in their bottles in their truck because there wasn't even enough time to go to the bathroom.
Inexcusable.
Yeah,
absolutely inexcusable.
And
far on away from the crypto topic. So the thing about it's a lot about how like people have the confidence in the stock and how the emotions that really drive it. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you can make the same argument with the dollar. How confident are you that you can buy a gallon of oil for this price? How confident are you that you can buy a dozen eggs?
Oh, we're getting into
it's a lot of how well can it actually be implemented into the economy and the confidence of the economy with the currency. And that's where, if you say you had a big company like Amazon saying, hey, we're going to accept cryptocurrency as well as the US dollar, that's where it comes into, okay, the confidence of that crypto is going to skyrocket.
Well, you know what's funny? There was a chance. There was a chance for cryptocurrency to be legitimized because I believe there is a country in South America that has Bitcoin as a legal tender. Can't remember which one. If any of you crypto heads out there know it, please put it in the chat. We really need to know this because it's going to eat away at my head until we find out.
It was something in South America. I do know that. I remember hearing about that. I think it was like Paraguay?
No, it was not Paraguay. Well, Jack will find it for us.
Our producer Jack will figure it out right now.
However, we're talking about crypto.
Right. And how we're confident in it and how it...
El Salvador.
It was El Salvador. And it had a chance. So El Salvador legitimized it. Tesla legitimized it until they backtracked. They said, we'll take Bitcoin. We pumped, billions of dollars into Bitcoin. We bought billions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency. And then, hey, we're going to accept it. And Bitcoin went, woo, to the moon, as they say on Reddit. And then all of a sudden it got delegitimized when Tesla said, we're out. And their argument was legit.
They still hold it. They're just not accepting exchanges anymore.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
If you notice, the reason why they gave is because of energy, because of the mining.
That's
but
right.
If you look at Ethereum and how they're getting rid of that because of the energy dependency, if you transition away from that negative side of crypto, there's still a chance down the road that crypto takes over. The dollar is going to be inefficient. The physical bills is going to see. I'm not saying they're going to disappear.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
And cash will always exist in our economy, at least from my belief. But I do believe that you are going to see crypto tied to a dollar bill. I think you will be able to take cash and exchange it for crypto in your account.
It's funny you mentioned that because China is currently experimenting in certain cities in China. I can't remember which provinces they were, but they were experimenting with a crypto yen just a digital yen. The people as part of the experiment don't carry around cash. It's just on their phone. It's kind of like a personal ID, and they use it. You go to a store and you just scan the QR code, and there's no cash, and you can use
kind of like Apple Pay and again what we do a lot.
And it's tied to a cryptocurrency, though. I don't know how that's going to work out, because don't people have to buy into your crypto? Well, I guess if China tries to continue a push for economic expansion, they probably will attempt that.
Yeah, and if it's a centralized crypto yen, it's going to be backed by yen.
Yeah, by the yen.
The sucky thing about the U.S. dollar is not backed by gold anymore.
No, it's backed by the dollar.
Exactly, backed by the dollar. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The dollar is backed by the dollar. That's all it is. With cryptocurrencies, it's backed by, each coin has its own niche, and it's backed by those niches that make people want to get it more. Bitcoin being the first of its kind, and also an anonymous currency. As long as you don't blab what your wallet is, that's what makes it popular, at least in the beginning. Ethereum, a lighter weight coin that can travel faster. That's what makes that a niche coin. Cardano coin, a coin mined using green energy. That's what makes it
I didn't even know that was a coin.
Oh, yeah, ADA, Cardano. Yeah, their whole niche is that they're mined with completely green energy, which means it's centralized, which means it has stability. I'm no economic expert or stock expert, but every time I've gone in on Cardano, I've made money a month later.
So then I have a real question.
Mm-hmm.
Then if it's powered by green energy, then Tesla has its cryptocurrency.
Yeah, you'd think. I think because it's not big enough.
Would be yield.
It's not big enough, and there's probably not enough coins to go around yet until it's made. And,
see, I have this falsehood in my head for some reason that cryptocurrencies are infinite. I forget that things like Satoshis are limited.
Satoshis are just smaller fractions of Bitcoin.
Smaller notation.
So Bitcoins are limited. Is that right?
Yes. Satoshis are like fractions of Bitcoin. The total amount of mineable Bitcoin is 21 million. I believe we're at around 17 million. Jack, could you look up how many Bitcoins have been mined? And then every, I believe, 4 years, they half the amount of total mineable Bitcoin per day. And then eventually we're going to get to the 21 million cap where we can't mine anymore and all Bitcoin has been mined. My theory of what's going to happen at that point, and this is just from me watching, there's a video on YouTube by a YouTuber called Barely Sociable. I highly recommend this video. It's about the identity of Satoshi, who is the founder and inventor of Bitcoin. And this person has a fortune of 1 million Bitcoins. And
wow.
And isn't that like a modern day Goonies adventure film to go find the flash drive that has the wallet codes for the 1 million Bitcoin fortune? Jack, do you know how many
so
Bitcoins?
It is, as of February 28th, 2021, there is 18.5 million.
We are coming up.
Out of 21 million?
Yeah, we are close. Out of 21 million.
Wow.
And if you lose Bitcoins, if you lose your wallet code and whatever, because it happens all the time, rich people will die and not tell their passwords to anyone.
Not even that. There was a guy on the news. I mean, I saw it on Reddit at least. He lost his wallet code. He had like 800 grand worth of Bitcoin in the wallet that he lost. He had no idea. He had no idea what the password was.
One of the interesting long-term effects of Bitcoin is what happens decades down the line when less and less Bitcoin are in the market.
It's a more drastic.
We're mining it, but once it reaches its limit, it's only going to get smaller from there at that point.
It's a more drastic reality of the dollar bill. I mean, think about like people's. This is obviously a crazy analogy, but like the stories of people's houses burned down and all their cash was stored like under their bed or in
walls,
somewhere. Yeah.
But the difference with that is you can just
print more.
The dollar bill is.
That's the Fed.
You go to the bank and you exchange it for something.
Yeah. The digital number is not the physical number. Exactly. The banks are all insured federally. If someone steals your $2,000 from the bank, like physically, the federal government will pay you back. The digital number is the physical number when it comes to Bitcoin, when it comes to Ethereum, when it comes to other digital coins. My theory, when we get to the 21 million, my theory is that Satoshi will take his fortune. He will reveal who he is to the world. And this is just me going crazy on a conspiracy
or
theory.
she.
He's going to. We think it's a he. There's narrowed down to who he is. Not saying a woman can't invent Bitcoin. Well, I didn't. Just saying that the suspects all point to certain programmers and certain people.
I'm gonna be fair. I didn't know that information. So I was just being fair, but now that I know
I'm more
that,
or less referencing a YouTube video that made by Barely Sociable. I highly recommend it. He did a lot of really good research. I believe, and this is in my like just wheelhouse of conspiracy, and it's the whole thing about Satoshi. He was very big on the message boards of if you lose Bitcoin, there's no getting it back. If you lose your codes, there's no reset password, there's no whatever. And to quote him, he said, if you lose your Bitcoin, consider it as a gift to the rest of the Bitcoin community for making Bitcoin more valuable, because now there's less.
That's fair.
I believe when the 21 million mark is reached, Satoshi will reveal himself, show the keys to his wallet in like folded so you can't actually like access his wallet. And then he destroys the keys, making that 1 million inaccessible.
And that's his gift.
And that's his big gift. Congratulations, you made it to the end. Because imagine how much Bitcoin would spike if 1/21st of it, almost like fraction wise, 1/21st of it just disappeared.
I've never heard that fraction before.
I know, right? It's not like an easy fraction.
Shout us out if you've heard the fraction 1/21st, 121.
Yeah, 1/21st. Yeah, 1/21st of it just goes, just gone. Absolute, like it would be insane. It would spike prices, which I don't know, because we see people who have like $1 million in Bitcoin, 800,000, where they lose their Bitcoin and it doesn't drastically increase the price by much. I feel like they would need the publicity to do that, and to that point, crypto would have to be a super mainstay, which I think it's heading that direction.
You would need the headlines. You would need everyone kind of freaking out about it.
Oh yeah, you would need
people.
I just sold my car for Bitcoin. It's okay. I'm going to buy it back tomorrow and still make a profit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then out of the shadows, someone else says that they're Satoshi, and they actually have the Bitcoin keys.
Oh, that would be such an insane if like
people like we're making
imitators, and that would be nuts.
We're making a movie now. Oh, we must do this.
Sure thing.
There's a whole thing I just thought of is if someone started buying up Bitcoin just to destroy it.
That's just me.
Kind of like doing. Yeah.
You're gonna boost the cost of Bitcoin.
So that I actually wrote down about your theory of the end for, well, not the end, but like the end point of mining for Bitcoin.
Right.
I'm interested when we hit the 20 million mark to watch how the Bitcoin flows, because it's interesting to watch a currency flow throughout an economy and to see what avenues and where a lot of wealth ends up being stored. The flow of wealth is interesting, and it can be good for advertisers, and Facebook can make a ton of money off of it. However, where the money is stored is also pretty important, because that's where security is. Right. That's your economic security. Okay. So obviously we'll never know, because it's all encrypted, and you'll never know who actually owns what amount.
Yeah. It's funny that you guys talking about someone buying Bitcoin just to destroy it and just to raise the price of Bitcoin. It's like a good guy version of BlackRock, what we were talking earlier, where how BlackRock is buying a bunch of properties to skyrocket prices, like the villain version of this story. It's crazy, like how everything ties into each other. Speaking of shady organizations like BlackRock, we had some FBI topics we wanted to talk about.
So, unfortunately, I had to read through an entire article by BuzzFeed News. And the reason I say unfortunately is because I don't like reading stuff about this. I grew up I still am a patriot. I truly believe I love this country to the core. And I get sad when I see situations like the situation with the kidnapping conspiracy of Governor Amy Whitmer in October of 2020. So let's go back in time. October 2020, the election's next month. It's Joe Biden, who's kind of been doing his technological campaign online mostly, starting to get back in person. Trump's been all over the place, even through COVID. He doesn't give a damn. He's just like, bring me everywhere. And all of this political hostility is rising toward the end, and then this bombshell came out by the FBI stating that they had stopped a plot where armed, quote-unquote, right-wing extremists were going to attack the governor's mansion, kidnap Amy Whitmer, take her to Wisconsin, and then put her on trial for tyranny. Some people might already know about this. It was in the news a lot in October. More news came out about it, especially thanks to BuzzFeed. They actually filed court documents to reveal information about the case. So a lot of this, you can thank BuzzFeed for a lot of the information. Dude, it
Never
was.
thought I'd say that, man.
I'm
That's
telling
crazy.
you, it was really good journalism.
Yeah, I
I wish I knew the guy's name. You really should look. You really should read it. So let's start at the beginning of this entire plot. There is a Facebook group on obviously Facebook called Wolverine Watchmen. They are this is how they post, this paramilitary sort of meme propaganda style campaign, and especially about certain topics like
general run-of-the-mill 4chan LARPers kind of a thing.
But no, that's exactly it. If you don't know what that is, if you don't know what that is, be careful Googling it. You might get on the list.
The big igloo kind of people, they're the ones who are like, I'm ready for anything kind of a thing.
So this Facebook group, they get approached by these different people, and different people get brought into the organization. One of them end up rising to be second in command of the entire operation, and it turns out he was wearing a wire for 8 months in collaboration with the FBI with this group. So it turns out that there were a dozen FBI informants involved in this entire conspiracy. 7 people were arrested and charged for the actual conspiracy. Everyone else, well, we are finding out in court documents that they had a hand in almost all aspects of the plot.
So how many people were there total involved? Was it the 12 FBI plus the 7?
What we know right now is there are at least 12 FBI informants involved, and 7 have been arrested. How many more people may have been co-conspirators, but maybe in a more sort of light way, not providing resources, maybe just posting propaganda, stuff like that. Maybe there was more, but as far as I know, that's the numbers. So the inception of this plot begins, and there's an FBI informant, and I believe he was an Iraqi war vet. He was paying for travel and board for people to come to meetings across the country to garner enthusiasm for this crazy plot. And the reason why Amy Whitmer, for people that might not know or maybe don't live in Michigan, is Governor Whitmer was one of the strongest proposers of strict lockdowns in the United States. So lockdowns were extended, businesses were kept closed longer, and that was used, and that was part of the stuff that BuzzFeed was able to get out, was text conversations in their groups. And they used that, these FBI informants, to use that to egg on the people that are a part of this group. It's very crazy stuff. Now, I just want to preface this by saying these people that got arrested, they might not be the best guys. Like, they might not mean harm to Amy Whitmer without a lot of push, but
it's not like these guys were like, I'm going to deliver a strongly worded message to her inbox today. These are people who wanted to do stuff. They just needed the push.
Yes, they needed the push. That's exactly right. I think that's a great wording of it.
Which, to it's credit though. Is that push enough? Like, would they have done anything on their own, or is that or is the FBI to blame for them even going at it? Would they have just stayed and LARPed in their Facebook group?
Well,
or
folks,
would they have actually done something?
Let's get dirty into the details. So the first detail I have for you involving this. There was an FBI informant, obviously, who paid for room and board. They had created meetings all across the country trying to get more people involved. The FBI informants, as part of the stuff BuzzFeed let out, or BuzzFeed got a hand of, text conversation saying from the FBI informant, hey, you need to get as many people in this as possible. Like, do you have people for recon? Do you have this? Do you have that? Like, pretty much laying out an entire baseline of things like people they need, like how people should be involved in the entire thing. Someone, like I said, I believe it was the Iraqi war vet who rose to second in command of the entire operation, and he was actually egging on, from what it looks like in the court documents, the leader of this group to continue going along with this plot. And the craziest information that we found out of this investigation by BuzzFeed is that the informant had contacted an FBI agent about acquiring resources to train these co-conspirators to commit the crime, training them We don't know the amount of resources that they got. That was not released in the court documents. But the fact that an FBI informant is asking an agent, hey, what stuff could we use to train these guys to do this? That just sounds like entrapment.
So like a miniature Al-Qaeda.
You
literally just like the same thing that's been happening in the Middle East. We train them and then they leave and then they become their own terror. Like, do they not have any other plays in their playbook?
Unfortunately,
is this how they have to handle everything like that?
Unfortunately, my friend is half right / full right. There was a situation back on the War on Terror. I believe it was the Herald Square, the Emerald Square bombing. I forgot which one it was. I apologize for that. We will get Jack on that right now to figure out which bombing it was.
Oh, producer.
It was a young 18-year-old Muslim boy, and he was kind of a loner, living in his mom's basement, not really trying to do much. And he posted on Twitter this thing kind of referencing, praise Allah, he's a Muslim. He's posting his stuff.
That's nothing.
Emerald Square bombing. The FBI had thwarted a plot of an 18-year-old boy from blowing up, using a bomb to blow up, I believe it was a train station. And it turns out that there was an FBI informant involved who would talk to this kid for hours a day, showing him pictures of the atrocities at Abu Ghraib, similar issues like U.S. Bombing strikes across the Middle East, and radicalizing this young boy. And it got to the point where the kid was like, hey, I kind of have to ask my mom to like do anything more. Like, he was a kid. He was asking like, hey, I might need to ask my mom for help. And I believe he made a similar case. Like, this is entrapment. Like, I would not have done this without the resources and the support from this informant.
Looking for the bomber himself, the man arrested in the case.
Yes.
So, Tariq Mahana, 27 years old.
Oh, even...
So it might have started when he was 18 and then led up to be when he was 27.
Okay, yeah.
It occurred from 2001 to 2008.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I was going to say...
All right, so then it started when he was 18 and then it led up to that point, and then he got baited. And a similar thing happened here where the second in command had literally set the bait trap that would get the co-conspirators arrested.
That's insane. Like, the FBI, like... Are they so bored they have to make their own problems?
Well,
it's like they go in, they're like, hey, this might be a mild problem. Oh, you know that's kind of what it is. Now that I'm thinking about it, they're kind of like a fire crew where they show up and it's like, like this is embers right now. It's probably going to die out and not turn to anything. We can't really do our job and do anything. We're going to go back or do whatever that whatever else they would do. So we're just going to egg this out. We're going to fan this flame so it becomes a fire. So we can put on the turnout gear and turn everything out.
I don't want to get political, of all people, on the political podcast. But think about the political implications of that event. And many people might not remember, but the second that happened, all the press was behind it. The FBI had released this huge statement about all this crazy conspiracy stuff.
Don't trust the feds, kids.
Well, you know what? I'll write that down because there's something I want to talk about later that I heard about from a guy named Eric Weinstein.
Was it Weinstein?
Yeah, I think it's Eric Weinstein. And he said something to the effect of, institutions in this country used to work. We had supplied the arsenal for democracy in World War II and defeated the Nazis and the Italians and the Japanese. I said the Germans, right? Yeah. Obviously with help, but we were able to supply the arsenal. Now, then that was when people trusted in the institution so much that they rationed their food. They waited days to wait, like no oil lamps during the day. They sacrificed because there was a trust and stuff like this. It's unfortunate to hear because it breaks the trust of institutions that during COVID-19, if we could actually trust our institutions, they could have helped a lot more than what really was.
Right. And let's not, I don't want to get twisted though. It's not just, oh, that's a shame. We kind of lost trust. No, it's because these institutions took advantage of the trust that we see much later on with things like during Reagan's presidency, dropping off crack in low-income African-American neighborhoods, doing things like
Rick Ross, the CIA pretty much protecting
CIA
him.
Stuff like that, doing things like radicalizing these groups still today. They violated the trust. So like it's not one of the like I'm not saying like you're wrong. I'm not trying. I'm just saying let's make sure we frame it the right way, where it's not like we used to be something. We should go back to trusting these institutions again.
No.
That's absolutely not what we're saying.
No, absolutely.
It's because these institutions took advantage of the trust that now there is none, and they're not going to stop. They're not going to try to like reconciliate. They're not going to try to limit themselves power wise. They're going to just keep going until we say enough is enough. Mm-hmm. And when we try to say enough is enough, the FBI is in that group that's saying enough is enough and getting us to act the fool. So that way it looks bad and we get in trouble and everything gets shut down.
I think like a really good thing to talk about right now because of this topic is the radicalization of specifically young men in our society, especially with social media. And, you know, we mentioned 4chan earlier and people rag on 4chan a lot because there is a lot of stuff on 4chan that isn't really, it's not safe for work and it's probably not safe for the average person. Like, but these, not 4chan specifically, but sites that or content that indoctrinates young men and young girls too into these, you know, radicalized ideas, it definitely has had a profound effect, especially on politics, you know.
100%. Social media is a plague on every aspect of American life. And I say that with the utmost confidence, because it got the utmost conviction.
I feel like it lost its way. Because remember when Facebook started and everyone was like, "Oh, you can add your grandma. You know, grandma who lives in Florida. You can talk to her now.
You can visit my farm on Farmville." And then, the good old days of that. And then it turned into this radicalization echo chamber. It turned into issues where, the echo chambers. It turned into issues where people have self-image issues because they compare themselves to these massive accounts without fully understanding what goes into some of these massive accounts and what happens with some of these people and how these people already had like money and connections,
especially branding, you know, young people. And, you know, I think we all to some effect feel the effects of capitalizing on the social media sort of market.
Right.
The idea that we can meet up to these brands like who's really famous on TikTok, Charli D'Amelio, this girl, like whatever, you know, people on YouTube trying to bring yourself to that height and trying to be like that person. It's not, I feel like that's not what it's about. It's about being you know what I mean? Like
I kind of see what you're saying.
And I feel that the indoctrination gets in the way of that because people start at a base. I started my real political sort of ideologies with you. We were part of the Junior NYLC and we went to Washington, D.C. for a very cool trip. We were like 10 years old. It was an awesome, awesome experience. And I was so lucky that I had a really stable environment to grow a political belief. But it's difficult to see that is hard to get. You need a lot of resources to get that, or you need connections, or you might need literal, like, just people. You might need people around you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I totally agree with that. That going to Washington, D.C. and especially with going there and learning about that, and especially like talking with my dad and stuff. My dad is probably the most honorable gentleman to be on this planet right now. He is someone that preaches like old American values where it's, you know, we're all Americans. Super big proponent of like Abe Lincoln and stuff. And he would teach me and my brother, like, these are why these people are remembered and good people and important. So that way it grew my basis of that. And then I explored that on my own by watching like political podcasts and other things that I could get into. I remember when I was like 2012, downloading the InfoWars app and listening to all that and like putting these ideologies head to head.
Do you remember Liberty Kids?
Yes, I do remember Liberty Kids.
Okay, how much of propaganda was that?
I haven't seen it in a while. Like to be fair,
it's been so long.
But the episode that sticks the most out to me for some reason is the Tar and Feather episode.
Yes.
Where
oh my god.
Yeah, where the kid was because the kid, the teenage guy, because it was a teenage guy who I think was English. And then there was a redheaded girl who I think was also either English or Scottish. And then there was like a younger French boy. I think he was French. And the older English boy thought that tar and feather was the funniest thing. And then he met someone who got tarred and feathered because he said, hey, maybe we shouldn't harass like British soldiers while they're doing something. And I'm not shilling for the British. I'm just telling the story.
200 years later, we've already been bought out on the first episode by the British Empire.
And he saw someone like suffering, and he cried and said, "Can I help you?" So when we get these, and that's actually kind of a really good metaphor for social media politics versus in real life politics. In social media, when you're in these echo chambers, when you're constantly hearing the same things over and over again, Twitter, just throwing this out there, the top 10% of users,
he tells me this all the time,
make 90% of tweets.
I'm telling you, it's all the
That
time.
is not a false statistic.
That is what's insane, is that you have these people, this relatively small group of people, saying things over and over to each other and radicalizing. Because the enemy of ignorance is travel. I think who said that? That's a quote by someone.
What is the enemy of ignorance is travel?
Is traveling. It is travel, or it's like world something. It's about, like, essentially the quote means when you meet people in real life and you're not on social media behind the screen, you start to develop a more kinder approach to politics, because you're not sitting there festering in your own ideas with other people of similar ideas. And like Liberty Kids kind of shows that in that episode, where he like only knew about that through the papers. And then when it happened, he's, oh my goodness, this is horrible. And it's the same way where people will base their entire political beliefs and personalities off of social media. And they will stake these things so hard, they become so detached from reality that they don't want to be brought down back to earth.
And it happens on unfortunately both sides.
And both sides, yeah. It's not a singular side issue.
Not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge.
Ignorance is the illusion of knowledge. That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's Stephen Hawking.
Oh, it is nice. Yep. Good.
Modern quote.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes, nice. Yeah, that, and unfortunately, that's how it goes through that, where you have these echo chambers, and then you have organizations like the FBI that take advantage and even set up and perpetuate their own echo chambers to trap people. We have this really weird time right now, and this might be a little bit of a tangent here, where we have this is dangerous now, through social media and through this advancement of quote unquote woke culture. And before I go in, I'm going to preface this with something that our CEO Dan says all the time. Don't be mad at the propaganda and the people in the propaganda. Be mad at the people pushing it on you. You have this group of people, this group of young men, military-aged men.
That's a key
demographic, who is constantly feeling as though they are not as good as women because they're men. We have especially more Caucasian men that feel like, because like, you know, white men have to be the bad guy and everyone's the bad guy in like modern advertisements.
It's an unfortunate targeting of someone just based on their race.
Which I don't support for anyone. Yeah. No one should be targeted on their race. No one should be targeted on their gender and who they are. And you have this group of people who are going through these echo chambers, and you know, like say they have a bad day, and then they kind of realize, hey, yeah, the media is starting to marginalize us in an attempt of demarginalizing a group that was already marginalized. Marginalized.
And unfortunately, you know, especially when it has to do with the media, these media companies are private companies listed on the NASDAQ. You know, they are beholden to their shareholders. And if they believe that talking about these culture issues and trying to really propagate racial issues, especially like trying to paint a good guy or a bad guy, and this can be any news network across the spectrum that can be found liable for doing this.
And you have these group of young men who are feeling this way, either like really strongly or vaguely feeling it, and they are desperate to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That's just a thing that all young men feel, like black, white, straight, gay, anything like that. That's all young men at one point feel the need to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
It's a brotherhood.
It's a brotherhood. We want to contribute. We want to be part of some kind of like fraternity. We want to be some kind of thing that like makes us feel like we're doing like what we're supposed to be here to do. And you have these people who are hungry for that, where the media is either unintentionally or intentionally pushing them toward an area of anger. And then you have the FBI saying, hey, look at this spark, let's get out the gasoline, and making and perpetuating these echo chambers that trap these young men and put them in the situations to where they're arming and training them to then detain them. Like, do you think that, say they're in jail for like 5 to 10 years because nothing sticks, and say they get out for
they're looking at 25 to life.
Oh, looking 25 to life. Oh,
that's domestic terrorism.
I retract my previous statement.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's rough. It's so rough.
Yeah. Right. So say for instance you have something like that where you have something a lot less than domestic terrorism. Say you have like a kid who grew up shooting firearms. He loves guns. He loves the history of it and everything. And he falls into one of these echo chambers and he tells someone who he unintentionally thinks is who he doesn't know is an FBI agent to say, hey, look at my cool gun collection. This is awesome.
Well, I just want to clarify informant.
Yeah, informant.
The informants were all up.
Right,
and also, I apologize for interrupting, but this is really good context, by the way. FBI informants are paid. They are either compensated monetarily or they are forgiven for past or current crimes, especially in relation to the thing that they are informing the FBI on. These are very, very large incentives for people to do these types of things. And after you're done, we can talk about some of the informants that were used in the case.
Yeah, let's go for it. I'd love to finish my point that you have these young men who want to be a part of this, something bigger than themselves, and they get just absolutely trapped. And then we'll say like they have a lighter sentence. Say it's not something as big as like domestic terrorism. It's not something 25 to life. Say it's something they only go to jail for 5 years or 10 years and then get off in 2 for good behavior. Do you think that person is going to re-enter society going, hey, I served my time and what I was doing is wrong and that's that? They are going to enter society as a highly radicalized, highly angry young individual who is the one who is going to be like, we're going to shoot at the FBI, count me in, because like that's the unfortunate collateral damage that the FBI is doing by propagating these echo chambers that are ensnaring these young men. You're making like what you're trying, like they're making what they're trying to catch.
This is why,
and it's going to get out of control at some point. And then it's going to be, look at these like, these, fragile white men boohoo because they're scared that someone's, like that Nick Fury is now black in the Avengers. But it's not, it goes a lot deeper than that.
I didn't understand that reference.
But Nick Fury was originally white in the comics.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Well, you got to fit Samuel L. Jackson in somewhere.
Yeah, well, because no one cares when it's like a good actor pick. But still, like I'm just using that as an example.
I understand.
Where people get scared, like, hey, am I getting replaced?
Right.
Are people are people treating me poorly on this when we grew up our entire lives, especially in public school, being taught that being a racist is the worst thing you possibly could be? Not defending racism. I'm not saying that like, oh no, it's a great thing to be racist. I'm saying that like, because I grew up thinking no one is different based on how they look. And I don't have any preconceived notions about anyone based on anything. But now you can discriminate against white people and certain judges will not give you a case in court. It's scaring some people.
That's really unfortunate.
It's scary. And I know the counterpoint of, oh, well, you don't like it when it happens to you. I wasn't there in the 60s. I wasn't there when slavery happened. I don't want to perpetuate a system like that.
Nobody does.
We're in the generation that deconstructs the system. Let's not construct an equally harmful one while we're doing that. Let's take these pieces and put them on the ground. Let's not build another slaughterhouse.
I think that's a great point. You nailed it. We're trying to deconstruct this system that was unfortunately not a major part, but it was a part in the founding of our nation. Our first two of our first 3 presidents owned slaves, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. They were both torn on the idea of slavery in the first place. Yeah. And you I can't believe how good of a point you made. Right, and that was so true.
When you bring up like old presidents too, you have to bring up the historical lens. Not defending slavery. Slavery is awful. No. Obviously, there's an active slave trade right now in areas of Africa, and it's disgusting.
Africa, look at China as well.
Oh yeah, China,
Xinjiang.
It's something that makes me wish the UN actually had balls and they were able to go and do something about it. Where it's disgusting that these things still exist in the time we're in. Unfortunately, things had to exist back then to get to where we are now. Not saying it's a good thing. I'm definitely saying it's a bad thing. But we can't get in our time machines and free all the slaves and change history. We can't do that. And trying to do that through censoring history books, through trying to like delegitimize the people that founded this country, it's only going to make things worse because it's going to fuel that fire of, hey, they're replacing us, of these young military-age males who are scared that this world is now turning on them. Like there needs to be like a middle ground where we can say like, no, we just want people to know, yeah, they did something that's bad. And no one's going to say, oh yeah, dude, George Washington was awesome. He's my favorite president because he owned slaves. No one says that. And
if you do, that's rough.
Yeah, you do that.
That's a rough idea. That's a rough idea.
That's a yikers. We're not gonna. We don't acknowledge that as.
Fortunately, we have the freedom to believe what we want to believe.
Yes, and
we believe
right. And we believe in freedom and equality for all. And it took a while for America to get to the example that they were saying, but I'm glad that we did. And yeah, there's rough patches along the road. There's rough patches on any relationship, not to mention country and citizen relationship. But when you delegitimize these people, when you tear down statues of people that did other great things, the biggest example I have to mind, my favorite president is Theodore Roosevelt, purely because he was an absolute beast. He boxed and wrestled in the White House. He had exotic pets. He hunted exotic game. He started the national parks. He was the radical centrist that we had as president, where he had right-wing views on how to be like a society and masculine and doing things. But then he also had left views of conservation and keeping the world safe. And I think that's a really good middle ground, really good president. A lot of people try to cancel him right now, and they tore a statue of him down outside of one of the museums dedicated because there was a war against the Native Americans at the time.
Yes,
and there is a very major quote from him that is, to quote Theodore Roosevelt, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian."
Ooh.
Now, that's not a quote I stand behind. It's not a quote I agree with at all.
That's milk. That's old milk.
Yeah,
right
that's old milk.
Age
exactly. That's gross. It's something I don't support. I support all the policies that were in place. And I truly believe if like he wasn't at war trying to get land for the land that he loves, there wouldn't be like a race issue. To me, it seems like it's just a hype up to where you can make an us and them narrative and have people want to go fight the dirty enemy, which we do all the time. Did 9/11. We did, especially with the war on terror. Yeah. Remember when we were like, oh, those Muslims hate us over there and everything. And there was a scare on the big Muslim scare and everything.
We saw a big surge of that with coronavirus. I mean, when
there's huge trust in them with coronavirus, the anti-vaxxers. And I have like this slight tangent conspiracy theory on that. I'm going to let you finish your point, and then I have something else to say.
I meant more of like towards China. And it's kind of weird because when COVID really started first spreading and we started wondering and looking at Wuhan and we started looking at the meat market and we noticed that 2 blocks away was the Wuhan Institute of Virology and all of these crazy questions came up. And then at some point it became racist to talk about the lab leak theory, even though the mainstream idea was that Chinese people were eating bats and weird, gross animals, and it caused a global pandemic.
So first,
there was a person named Crystal Balls. I paraphrased her statement there, but I feel like it rings pretty true.
Yeah. So like just the first thing I want to say to that comment is every culture is gonna have different food. And like, and like usually like weird gross like I like octopus stew because it's a nice Portuguese thing. It's weird and gross to some people, but like it's more just subjective.
Yeah, but isn't that worse in like the form of like a rate, like in form of a social view, like, oh, these people are just weird and gross and they eat bats. Yeah, and versus there could have been a crazy accident that happened.
And statistically, though, like just to offer the counterpoint, statistically, there was an significant increase on hate crimes toward Asian people in the United States who had nothing to do with China or the labs in Wuhan. So like I understand hey, let's not like start crapping on the Chinese because a lot of idiots can't tell the difference between a Chinese like national and someone in America who is of Asian descent.
Right.
A lot of people can't tell that, and a lot of people just have this anger that's built up and they just want to take it out. I understand that argument, but the Chinese government, like, I'm glad it's put on blast and we can see what they're doing and how they're doing certain things. The Chinese government is atrocious. Free Hong Kong. Taiwan's its own country. I don't care if you ban us, Winnie the Pooh.
Oh my gosh. My personal opinion about the China thing was, you're talking about the CCP, right? That is an institutional government within China. The targeting of the people with like the racism, that stuff was crazy.
Right,
and
out
it was
of line, something that's not going to help the current situation, and something that these people, it was kind of
right,
like,
it's not going to help. It's just not going to help.
Kind of draw back from the earlier point where like people get mad at modern white people for things that like white people did way back when the country, like that we weren't there, like, you know, like,
and obviously we're pulling kind of huge strawman here,
but like, you know,
but unfortunately we see it, like we see it in front of
these
us.
people, like these Asian people who have lived in this country for like 3 generations had nothing to do with the Wuhan lab. There's no reason to attack these people. We're not condoning that, and like that's why I say, like, I do understand the point of trying to like China-ify, you know, to make a new word, like de-China-ify the coronavirus, because out of fear of Chinese discrimination and Asian discrimination in the United States. But at the other end of that blade, we need to shine a light on China and what they're doing
on the CCP,
on the CCP, and what they're doing. That's absolutely insane. When I say China, I mean like the Chinese government, the
obviously,
CCP.
But I like to make that point.
Yeah, make sure we're talking about the right thing,
because there are a lot of people. You know, there are just like there's regular people everywhere. You know, and there are probably Chinese people that really don't have much influence in their government, probably little to none at all.
Exactly, and like with the CCP's actual concentration camp against Chechnyan Muslims. I think that's Russia as well, going into like the Muslim population in that area. If you speak out against the government, it's in labor camps. South Park did a phenomenal episode highlighting, and what stinks about China is they can do that because they know no one can touch them. Because the only person who can is the U.S. And the U.S. and China right now have something called mutually assured destruction. And this is why, because every time someone brings up China, there's always someone who goes, why don't we just go to war with China? Or why don't we just blow up China? Or why do we just do that? No. We can't. Yeah. Because mutually assured destruction between the United States and China is purely economic. The United States is the world's biggest consumer, while China is the world's biggest producer.
And you can think the 1980s and to the early 2000s federal administrations for that one.
Yep. So you have this giant producer and giant-er consumer. These two have to live together, because if one dies, the other will then eventually die out as well. If China, just say like we just, Thanos snapped, China does not exist anymore. China's gone.
That's a big Thanos snap.
Yes. The United States would crumble. All of like the vast majority of what we have as far as products was made and manufactured in China. Like we wouldn't be able to get anything. Prices of everything would skyrocket, and it would be absolute chaos. And then that would send the global economy into a massive depression, because the biggest economy in the world, both the biggest economies in the world, just crashed. And then on the flip side, excuse me. Oh my goodness, what's in that water? And on the flip side, if the U.S. just suddenly disappeared, or the U.S. got like nuked by China, China is going to overproduce, and they're not going to have anyone to sell it to. They're going to have a massive supply with no demand. It's going to drive the price of everything way down on the sales, which means it's going to price of everything sold domestically in China way up. And then they're going to die because we're out. We can't escape this. It's super tough too.
So it is going to be hard to. I want to say that one of the things we could do to kind of alleviate that, and we've kind of been investing in it, is moving key developments and key production dependencies away from China.
Oh, 100%.
And like incentivizing U.S. companies to outsource from other countries or try to produce domestically.
One of the biggest Trump policies I supported was him saying we got to get these jobs out of China and back into the United States.
That was honestly my number one thing with Trump, was his trade policy. That man knew the primary objective with China was to reduce our dependency on them.
And if you watch China, they are gearing up for a messy divorce here with the U.S. The thing with U.S. and China is we want to sock each other in the face, but we have this MAD that makes it so we can't. The first country that breaks the MAD, that will be able to survive the other country dying is the one that's going to win this trade war. And China is building for that. China is currently trying to like radicalize young men against America through like strategic propaganda.
You don't even have to look that deep. You can literally just look at the Belt and Road Initiative. They are giving out massive loans to authoritarian dictators throughout Asia, South Africa, or excuse me, not South Africa, throughout Africa and throughout Southern Asia. And they're giving out these massive loans for building of construction of ports, of infrastructure. And then if the poor countries of Africa and South Asia don't make the bill, the Chinese government gets to take control of it. And wouldn't you know, it's also fully built by Chinese workers. They are, I mean, you're right. Like they're in a better position, I feel, than we are because they're able to actually, unfortunately, it's under an incredibly authoritarian regime, but they're even bad ideas get pushed forward.
Yeah.
And we are in a situation with our Senate where, unfortunately, we have all of this massive corporate influence with money, with Senator Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, as well as maybe 10 or so other Democrats and Republicans. And there's just so much money involved to make nothing go. Nothing can go. And we don't know who's behind the entirety of it because that information isn't disclosable to the public yet on large scale.
Big yet.
I think it'll be interesting to see because with China in their position, having the production infrastructure already, and you have so many emerging markets around the world. You know, look at India.
No. China and India, no, they won't touch each other. They economically, no. Did you guys hear about the border clash they had? Like maybe like 3 or 4 months ago.
I do remember
they were
that being
fist fighting to the death. They were throwing each other off of cliffs.
I think it was
crazy. Because they don't allow. Just for context, there is a disputed zone between China and India, right on the border of, I believe, Tibet, where Tibet was before China unfortunately annexed it. And now that sort of disputed zone, China and India have agreed to keep combustible weapons, for the most part, out of the area. Try to stop any happenings of further conflict besides these crazy scuffles that, like, barbed wire clubs, rocks. I mean, this is primitive, human, like, monkey fighting. It's crazy what China and India are getting into. Obviously, this was a while ago, a few months back, but it's still is a precedent that this has happened, and pretty much the global response was, okay, we're watching, we're waiting, and that's pretty much what the whole world is. We're just waiting,
and that's the thing.
It's entertainment.
And it's like, I hate that to say that again, entertainment, because no one can do anything about it, because the only country that can back up any kind of counter effort against China is the United States. And the United States cannot swing on China, because if we do, we hit ourselves just as hard. And if every other nation in the world says, screw you guys, we are all going to fight China, or screw you guys, we're all going to fight the US, they all kill themselves in the process, because then the global economy tanks, and then no one gets food, no one gets jobs, everything goes bad for everyone. So we're in this really weird situation where China kind of has this invincibility shield, and they can kind of do whatever they want. And until we can figure out how to break that or how to circumvent that, they will barrel into anything, knowing that no one can touch the Chinese.
We need to have
Chinese being the CCP.
One of the things that I kind of want to put the parallel to as well. I mean, we were talking about the FBI and how they have all these like ploys and stuff with our own nation, with our own people, and it goes both ways in a way. Like, China definitely has outscaled the negative side of all that. But if the U.S. does anything, right, we go and we just look at how we are in the Middle East. No one's going to be able to stop. No one can stop us. We have Russia kind of meddling and stuff, but fucking Russia has no power over us in that aspect.
Well, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate to talk about these types of topics because like they gloss over the mass human loss of any type of conflict. And it's one of those situations where if we want to try and get out of this situation with as many Americans alive as possible, proper movement needs to be made in the Senate to pass an infrastructure bill to support building America's infrastructure and not selling off infrastructure to private companies for a quick buck. No, going in, inspecting, creating jobs, having it so that people can actually work. We can build our economy. Eisenhower built the damn highways.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know, who uses the highways the most? A good old company named Amazon.
Yeah.
All the truck drivers, all of the Amazon delivery drivers, all the people that got to drive to the warehouse for work. That infrastructure, without it, Amazon isn't even possible. If we have dirt roads, I mean, they got to figure out how to fly helicopters around or drones.
Do you want to hear my solution? I saw this online. I like really elaborated and thought about it. You want to hear like my solution to this like corporate stuff and all this stuff of like international people playing both sides and coming out on top? And this is going to seem a little radical and stupid hard to enforce.
What do you before we start, what do you mean by both, like playing both sides and coming out on top?
Because Amazon works like with China and US to where like it doesn't matter if either falls, they're going to have like a stranglehold and everything. Like these corporations are strangling us in the Senate. They're going to make us unable to like be able to break this MAD and fight because we're too busy trying to like please these corporations instead of going through with getting rid of China, trying to like break these alliances between like China, Russia, and North Korea, and getting it so that way we're a little bit safer.
That's a dream.
Yes,
that's a dream. The thing is, I feel like on a world scale, I feel like regional alliances can be healthy, but I feel it's only healthy when you have people that are somewhat represented in their government. And you know, we can argue about how many people feel really represented in this country or in any country in general.
Yeah, no, it's bad. Let me tell you what I think we should do about like this big corporation thing, about everything. And this is a really extreme, really radical, but it's a measure that needs to be taken. If you are going to do business in the United States of America, all of your production needs to be in the United States of America. Pull every single person out of these Chinese factories and bring it here. Not going to be overnight. Not going to be like, hey, I'm, Drew, I get sworn in as, the next president. We're going to do this tomorrow. It would be a really gradual process. But if we can pull everything back and make U.S. the biggest producer and consumer, we would break that MAD. We would be able to step on China's toes and say, hey, get those Muslims out of concentration camps. Hey, free all those people that speak out against your government. Yeah, it would be tough. And it would definitely lead to probably like World War III-esque era.
Well, any point when if the United States or China becomes independent of one another, that's where we're going to see.
So it's going to go.
We can do it without having to like literally say, bring your production back. We can make it good. Like if we have good infrastructure, if we have the ability to build factories that can house workers that are paid a decent living, and you make it profitable for these countries, they'll want to come back. It's all about the shareholders. The shareholder profit is the main goal. And if you can make it harder and harder and harder for them to eke that shareholder profit more and more and more, then you'll have them pretty much on a leash.
Right.
They're beholden to their shareholders.
I think the idea of bringing production back to America is the primary goal, right? Some of the things in some industries,
or even like 80%,
need to be outsourced, whether it becomes to like material or whether it comes to, even production. Some places just do things better, and maybe it's more cost effective elsewhere.
Raw material would have to be an exception in that because you wouldn't be able to get stuff
from the States,
right? Right.
I think if we had something where we had almost like an ally list of like who do we approve of outsourcing to. These countries are on the green list. You can outsource to them. They're our allies. We're okay with our companies outsourcing to Taiwan, for instance.
No, you're racist.
Yeah.
You can no. It's a ridiculous argument in my opinion because it's geopolitics and like that's a thing. It's been a thing since ancient Athens. This isn't a new idea in American history, but there are all these perversions about these things. Like if you really, really try and make it so that, we have these certain allies and it's geopolitical, there are still going to be people that say, no, it's more than that. You're just being a nefarious hater, like hatred towards people.
And one of the things when it comes to people saying like, oh, it's just hate, it's people speaking into the echo chamber. They're just
Yes.
speaking on emotions at that point.
Yes.
They're stretching for what can we do against this idea. Like that's all personal emotions. That doesn't actually impact the reality of production or the economy.
Oh, exactly.
It's just about you're targeting these people because you're wrong. You just have negative feelings about them. No, it's because if we go with anyone outside of this list, it's going to negatively impact the security of this country. Right. And that has to come first over everyone's emotions of, why aren't we putting production in the Middle East? Why aren't we doing this and that? Like, why are you banning these countries for being outsourced? Who gives a fuck about how...
Yeah, and if we had
if we're not helping these countries and we're limiting them, it's about us. It's not about them. Prioritize the homeland.
And if we had trust in the institutions that were making these decisions, we could probably get behind them in some type of unifying rally and support the ideas of ensuring, that Americans can grow wealth. They're able to pass on their wealth to their children in a decent capacity and make it so that you are providing an attempt at a great life for people, which is what it always has been.
Exactly. And to paraphrase Jack, the perfect ender line there. We need to prioritize ourselves. Absolutely. 100%. Call me crazy, call me old-fashioned, but the president of the United States should care the most about enriching the lives of Americans. Yep. And that's what that is. I know I'm a hateful bigot, and I hate everyone that doesn't live within the 50 states of the United States. But I'm saying that we're dumping resources into helping a bunch of other people that we don't see, that don't help our economy. Some people that actively don't like us, and I'm gonna call out my least favorite country here. You think it's China? Absolutely not. Get ready.
Oh, I know it.
You know it. Israel, who during this COVID relief bill, when people were getting a laughable $600 to cover 8 months of rent, we gave Israel enough money to give every single family over $1,000. I think it was like $5,000 or something like that, so that way they could take care of themselves. They're our greatest ally. What do they do over there?
It was something.
Why can't you give that to us, the people that are within your borders, that are starving on the bridge of eviction, who are about to be in the streets with kids, with all kinds of things that we need, jobs and stuff like that? Why are we giving money to people that we're not going to see? We're not going to get a return on this.
I can tell that we lost.
I can tell you why,
because we're the taxpayers paying that money that went overseas. So we got $600. But
$4 billion a year too. On top of that,
it was the
COVID bill.
It was the government of Israel that decided to give the money to the people, wasn't it? I don't think the deal was for you get this if you give this to the families. I think they just got a grant, and then the Israeli government did it.
It's the math of it that I was citing, because we're giving the Israeli government this much money, and they can do this stuff, whereas we are pathetically trying to help people. It brings up let's do that for us first, and let's worry about our allies second. We America first from the Trump policy. A lot of people like to quote that with anti-Semitism, because people use that as a rallying call for Congress to not join World War II. After seeing the horrors of the concentration camps of Auschwitz, when evidence came out to the American people in Congress, a lot of people said, it doesn't matter, it's not our conflict, let's leave them alone. There's a difference between people getting systematically murdered, brutally extorted for work, and things like that. And then there's, hey, we either give this country a bunch of money to help their citizens, or give our country a bunch of money to help citizens. And don't even get me started on the Pakistani gender studies budget that was on that. Are you really?
How did we really?
Is that going to be? Is that what that's going to go to? Not the nuclear program, gender studies and nuclear physics. I feel like that's where that's going to go.
That was in the bill.
Yes, that was. They were given. I think was it $2 billion. They were given it was either $2 or $4 billion to. It was $1 billion with a B to Pakistan for gender studies and other educational programs, but mainly gender studies, to try to add this woke culture to Pakistan, which is fine on paper and it's admirable. I'll admit that. We do want equality between the sexes, especially over in an area that has that. I'm not saying that's what's wrong.
But we don't even have that here. We don't even have that here.
Yeah, we don't have that
And-
here.
That's
and the
the
close-
problem, is
yeah,
the
and-
focus is we're trying to better other countries.
Exactly. Yeah.
And-
well, yeah.
and-
No, exactly.
yeah.
We have to better ourselves, and
the
we're
intentions are totally
Yes.
pure and fine, and there's nothing wrong with those kind of intentions.
yes, of
But
course.
like those intentions need to be focused locally. Trying to throw money elsewhere and throwing it out of the country, you're
Mhm.
just you're burning it. You're absolutely
Yes.
wasting it.
And
because that's taxpayer money, and that
Right.
Oh, they just
taxpayer
heard
money
that
needs to go
water.
back
Oh,
to the
nice.
taxpayers.
Oh yeah,
water
that's an
bubble.
ASMR right there.
and the fact that we're giving just sums of money to governments and we're not supervising where it goes shows the kind of ignorance of Congress just sending money to wherever they want.
It's not. I
Like
mean,
you're going to give like a couple $1 billion to a country that hates us and that we had to do this whole nuclear deal to make sure that they didn't make a nuclear bomb. And we're just going to give them money under the guise of education. We're not even going to investigate it. We're not going to send somebody with that. We're not going to send a committee. Yeah, no, yeah, they're fine. We can't make them think that
that's
we don't
what's
trust them. Like, yeah, of course we should make them think we don't trust them. They don't like us.
like
they want to kill us. I don't
I-
understand. Like, and this was a big thing in Obama's era too. His policy was like, hey, if we give them money and we try to help them, they won't hate us. And that's a fine goal and admiration. That's I understand where
No.
you're coming from. Where you show up and you're like, no, we're the helping hand. We'd show them that, and that's fine. I understand that argument.
We need
But
to be the
then-
helping hand with a firm hand.
I
Yes,
have a- I
exactly,
have a-
because they're gonna go, oh, thanks for the money. We're gonna buy these AK and bullets. And we're gonna shoot at you because that's what they've done, and it doesn't work. It has to be supervised. It has to be something where we are there to make sure it's used to what it's supposed to be.
you mentioned.
It pulls away a little bit from what the good fortune that the idea of giving them money without supervision gives,
Mhm.
right? Because if you try to give trust like that, then the hope is that it builds trust between the nations. But realistically speaking, our trust levels are so wide and apart that we're not there. We can't trust that yet.
Yeah,
Just
We need to
because
have
you-
that firm hand to build up to that
Yeah.
trust level and amend things before we can just start doing stuff like that. And even still, it just blows my mind that we no supervision for gender studies and shit. Like
I know.
that.
Well, I mean,
Pakistan.
before-
Like,
I'm gonna say I agree with you guys, and I think there's an even worse culprit here than just foreign governments. It is also part of the 2020 coronavirus bill, part of the unemployment benefits and all that good stuff, and all of the spending that was a part of the bill.
Mhm.
Most of that money went to private businesses. Most of that money didn't even touch the employees. I mean, there was the paycheck protection program for a little while, and then it's put it through unemployment. But there was, I think it was $1 to $3 billion that was missing from the
Oh,
COVID
yeah, I
bill.
heard about
It was
that, yeah.
missing. It went bye-bye,
It just
disappeared.
vanished.
So, I mean, I agree. Like, we're
I
just
thought I had bad spending
like,
habits.
we're like,
Are you
that's-
kidding me?
and the United Kingdom did a really interesting policy where it was a pseudo universal basic income, and it was basically the policy where the feds are going to cover the payroll.
Mhm.
The businesses, we need you to stay closed. Unfortunately, the UK is still closed, and they're still getting hit by COVID, and all this political stuff's going on. But they were saying like, hey, we want to support you. We'll cover your salaries up to a certain cap, and then the businesses can stay closed. We can try and get through the pandemic and do whatever we can. But here it was such a different idea. The focus was on, protecting these corporations and like giving
Yes.
Boeing hundreds of millions of dollars in bailout money, and then they still laid off a ton of workers.
Which,
crazy
yeah,
is
it
that money-
shouldn't
Yeah.
have protected the corporations. It should have protected the small businesses because there was a massive wealth transfer. I don't know if anyone
And the workers,
brought that
by
up.
the way.
Yep.
yes,
Because the
it's-
workers at Boeing are just as important, I feel, as the small business owners, because it's
Yes.
a whole part. It's all part of the machine.
Yes.
It's
Well,
incredibly
I
integral.
will throw a counter argument. As much as I hate large corporations, a lot of society depends on them. Imagine if all major
Ma-
airlines just failed.
Hey, imagine
What
if
would we do
Amazon
for
stopped
travel?
working and every single Amazon worker just went on strike. It would collapse. Everything.
Absolutely.
People
The
would be
system is built on exploiting the
how
worker.
many hundreds of or how many tens of millions of Amazon orders would be canceled if Amazon just stopped?
And what happens to all the small businesses that depend on Amazon?
Yeah, like the
Yes.
entrepreneur
Yes.
economy that we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Amazon,
Critical.
DoorDash, that's more of a gig economy type deal, but
Mhm.
it especially with like Amazon, there's a lot of money in Amazon, and there is this unfortunate idea that, you can rise through the ranks at Amazon. But unfortunately, through investigations into Amazon's labor practices, they try to get people out within 1 to 3 years.
The hire to fire policy. Yeah. So I worked at Amazon for around a month. Right as the pandemic started, I was still in college, and I
remember those days.
Yes. And I was, I sat and I thought, like, I need to get a job. And I talked to my parents about it. My mom said, well, Amazon is hiring everyone who shows up. So I show up in a nice shirt. I have nice pants, nice shoes, folder of resumes, ready to talk to somebody. I walk in. Hi, down here, please. Like, she knew I was here for interview. And
because you were the only one in there that dressed like in a suit or a nice shirt.
I go over and I'm like, hi, I'm here to talk to someone about possibly getting a job. Just name. Like, it was ordinary. I'm like, oh, it's Drew. Like, I gave my name, and she looks at her thing and she goes, I don't have you on here. What's your email address? I'm sitting here like, what? How would you know I'm coming? Do they hire oracles on Amazon now? Like, I was so confused. She said, oh, did you sign up online? You have to go through the email. I had no idea. She was, all right, come back in 3 days. After we clear your email account and we make sure that you're here. So the autonomy of the process freaked me out. I never had an issue like that where, like, I didn't sit to someone. It was the weirdest experience where I've never worked a job before where I didn't have to sit in front of one or multiple people and then give a solid summary of what my character is like, so these people will trust me enough to work with them. Amazon was just like, yep, just get in here. So I got in there.
Yep.
I worked for around a month, and what struck me is that the supervisors would come up to me, and they would always. I had one in particular, and I love the supervisors. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here like crap. Yeah, there are good people there.
Yeah, there are people.
And I was talking to the supervisors, and like the supervisors said, hey, are you planning on being just a COVID hire, or are you planning on staying long term? Because I want to like train you, get you. They specifically are trained so that way the baseline for the people who come in are hire to fire. They are going to stay there until they either get something better and leave, or they're just going to get fired for doing something stupid or whatever. Yeah, nitpick when they don't want you working there, and they'll get you out. But if you're someone that they're like, hey, this person has a traditional working character, then they're like the supervisors and managers are trained to find those people and see if they can put them in their ranks to get the actual job going. But it's a perpetual system that's awful. It's something that like everything's automated. No one's a person.
There was a story about a 56-year-old Amazon worker who had worked at a warehouse for 5 years, roughly 5 years. They fired him over an email. They sent him an email telling him, you're fired. Yeah. Your retirement screwed. You do not have an income. You're not old enough to retire yet. You're done for. Good luck.
Yeah. When the thing that the thing that made me quit Amazon was very similar to that. The straw that broke the camel's back. Long hours. I worked nights. I was in the docks. I'm a big guy, so I'm like slinging packages all night. I got my seasonal allergies. A lot of people get them. It was the springtime, the beginning of COVID. So I'm starting to get a fever, sore throat, like COVID symptoms. I know they're not COVID symptoms, but if I go in and the temp guns read me as a fever and I say I have a sore throat, I'm not working for 2 weeks, and I don't want to sit there without any pay for 2 weeks. So I call the number that we get to contact HR. And I call them and it says, welcome to Amazon facility, blah, blah. If you're looking for like this department, press this. It eventually gets to HR. And it says, if you would like to get to HR, press this number. I press the number and the automated message says, if you're looking to call out, use the app, and then hangs up. And then hangs up the phone. So I'm sitting here dumbfounded, like not even, we couldn't ask the HR person to stop her third marathon of The Office to talk to me. I say that not disparaging HR workers, but because I would walk by their desk every day and watch them watching Netflix and doing nothing, and they claim they're the busiest people in the facility. So I file the time off request. And to add context to this, every week we would get a text from the facility that would tell us, this is the amount of people that have had COVID. This is the department they were in. Make sure you guys are wearing masks, washing your hands, just new stuff. Like we make sure gloves. You can't wear masks with ventilators on them anymore. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yes, and
that was big.
Yes.
That was a big bombshell.
And they ended every text with, "If you feel sick, stay home." And the whole thing on hiring was you have unlimited unpaid sick time. You're not going to get in trouble. Like you just, if you're not well, don't try. Because especially me, I'm in a truck. If I'm not feeling great and my hands are rubbing up against everything, my sweat's getting on boxes and stuff, I could infect the entire Eastern Seaboard. There were packages I had that were going down to Florida, Delaware, up to British Columbia, like all around the East Coast here. So I put in that time. No confirmation email, by the way. There is nothing confirming that someone got your message. So you just stay home and hope you're not getting fired. So
that's stressful.
Yes, it is. So I stayed at home that night. I got a good night's sleep. I woke up the next day. I felt great. I felt fine. It was just a day of seasonal allergies. That's fine. I go into work the next day. I tap my key card on the punch card, and the screen dings and says, "By the way, you have a pending disciplinary point." So I go to HR on my break, and I tell them, "Hey, I have a pending disciplinary point, even though I stayed home despite being sick. We have unlimited paid sick time. What's up with this?" And she said, "Oh, you only get unlimited unpaid sick time if it was COVID. And since it's obviously not COVID because you came in today, you're getting the disciplinary point for missing work."
Ooh.
That's messed up.
And I'm sitting here like, dude, I handle all these boxes. Like I could have gotten a lot of people sick if it was COVID.
Right. Yeah.
I had a feeling it wasn't, but on the off chance it was, I could have hurt a lot of people by coming into work. You don't know. Yeah, you don't know.
And I mean, at that point of the pandemic, we really didn't know the effect of COVID-19. Now we know that you really can't pass COVID-19 on surfaces. It's very, very difficult. And a lot of perfect circumstances need to be reached to catch COVID-19 from a surface. It's more of droplets from the air. But at the beginning of the pandemic, like you said, wash your hands, wear a mask. We didn't know if this thing was traveling on surfaces, in the air, if it could go to like cows or pigs, if we could have a huge outbreak in the meat pack. We were totally in the dark.
It was a big deal, and like everyone was on board. Like even a lot of these people who are now very anti-mask, anti-vax kind of a thing, we're still on board with the okay, like as a courtesy, let's do this so that way it can pass. So she tells me that, and I look at her and I say, okay, then I'd like to put in my 2 weeks. This is ridiculous. And she points at my phone and says, "You got to do that on the app, honey. I can't help you here."
You have to quit on the app?
Yes. Then okay, so number one, Amazon HR, what the fuck do you do? Number one, I'm asking that question. What the fuck do you do instead of watch The Office all day? And like, because I worked the night shift, right? There was HR there all night.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, because you could not tell what time it was inside. Like if it's 5 in the evening or 5 in the morning, there's just as many people there.
That's weird.
It's crazy. It's so weird.
Well, I mean, it's
the only way I could
24/7.
the only way I could tell what time it was because I was in the trucks. I could see out the windows. But if I was a picker or a packer, I would never know what time it was until the clocks told me. So it was absolutely dumbfounded. I put in my time on the app and I got out, but it was just the absolute most inhuman, felt like a cog in the system feeling I've ever felt. It was unreal. And I'm sitting here like, how can we let this practice? How's this practice still so effective when like you hire a bunch of employees just to get them out, and then you treat the ones that want to stick around like that?
Yep. And then if the workers want to try and unionize, we had a really big union campaign in Amazon warehouse in Alabama, I believe. And there were crazy lengths that Amazon went to thwart that union strike.
There were you talked to unions, and
there was a situation where Amazon had lobbied the town to like work with the street lights so that people at red lights would be at it like for a shorter amount of time. They were messing with the times. They were messing with placements of things around the Amazon, and it's like it's all money, and they're able to say, "Hey, well, we'll spend the money for brand new infrastructure right outside of Amazon as long as you just approve the plans."
Corporations should not have any say in critical infrastructure, especially when that critical infrastructure regulates traffic and saves lives and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, then that gets into the discussion of private construction and private restoration of public goods and public utilities like highway systems and things like that. What if this is a key part of our infrastructure, how much are we willing to spend in tax money for the profit gain? That's a very important question, I feel, isn't even talked about on the mainstream media. We have this infrastructure bill in the pipes of the parliamentarian, this crazy nobody that no one knows the name of. That
Can you tell me more about this bill? Because you brought it up a couple times. I don't think I know as much about it as you. And could you just explain to me and the audience what this bill's about?
So in the beginning, the idea was there would be two bills. There would be a standard bill that would go to the Senate floor after being passed in the House of Representatives and passed with a 60 vote majority. Obviously, you need 60 because they can filibuster it and make you need 10 more votes. It's ridiculous. All you do is literally send an email and saying, hey, I'm going to filibuster that bill. Good luck. And that's it. Anywho, enough about that. So the idea was there'd be two bills. The first one would go through regular order through the Senate, without the filibuster. And then another bill would be put through this Senate budget style architecture called reconciliation. And the idea is anything to do with taxing or the income of the state, the federal state, the state. If that has to do with this bill, it can be put through the reconciliation, which you only need 51 votes to pass, and you cannot filibuster it because it has to do with budget. So you can't filibuster a reconciliation bill. So all you need is all the Democrats on the side of Joe Biden and the Democrats to say, hey, all 50, Kamala Harris is going to break the tie vote and we're going to get a reconciliation bill through. So the idea is there is some infrastructure spending. Unfortunately, how earlier I mentioned, not just selling it to private enterprise for the cheapest dollar. That's part of the infrastructure bill that is trying to be pushed through reconciliation. What they're trying to, I forget the name of it, what they're trying to do is sell off old infrastructure to build new infrastructure. It was tried in Australia. I believe this was after the Great Recession as part of their rebuilding of their economy. And they tried it, and it turned out to be a huge failure because it ended up imposing further burdens on the average people who are working and having to pay for toll roads that now they weren't toll roads, or certain things will be more expensive because now there's a profit incentive behind it rather than just a public commodity that did not have an inherent profit incentive. And so now we're going to try that same thing according to this bill. And it worries me because we already have issues with our infrastructure, and so do a lot of other developed nations. And we are, in some capacity, afraid to spend to be able to reinvigorate infrastructure and not only just build new infrastructure. Our friend is an engineer, and he has crazy ideas that he sees online. And one of them was you put small wind turbines, these wind turbines that instead of spinning like a fan does, they spin like a cylinder upright, and you put them on the highway so the crosswinds generate energy. That is just a random idea off of the internet, and it sounds like a viable infrastructure plan that isn't going to need billions of dollars. And to give a profit incentive, you have to build and pay for the windmills, and then you put them on the highway.
And you know what? That's actually a really good idea and a really good alternative to the wind turbines that we have now.
Because they're huge.
They're huge. They are susceptible to weather.
If you're not smart.
Yeah, if you don't pay for the infrastructure.
Unfortunately, from what we saw with Texas earlier, with the freezes,
to be fair about Texas, with emergency management and emergency planning, you wouldn't expect that. That is a high impact, but also highly unlikely event. That's like saying, a meteor strike is a high impact event, but it is also a very high unlikely. But say a meteor hits and we say, oh, we're stupid for not preparing.
That's
you know what I mean?
Flood insurance in Nevada.
Oh yeah.
It just makes no sense to do it in Texas.
Caused a huge scrubble though.
Hurricane insurance in Montana.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
It makes no sense. And so when an event like that does happen, it's like you're going to have critical failure. It's just something that you could have prevented if you wanted to burn money for decades. If we looked at that, we haven't had a crazy ice storm in decades. Why are we still spending money on this technology? It's a waste of taxpayer. That's how you can look at it the other way.
Obviously.
Before this thing happened, you can't foresee something like that. So, but now that we have all these crazy weather patterns that are happening, we have droughts, these wildfires that are still raging.
We have the heat domes going on like everywhere. Thankfully, we're able to operate with a fan because it is hot around here. It's been very hot the last.
I was going to say the heat dome, which is entirely localized in my room in my apartment. I can't go to sleep at night.
And that's
sweating too much.
I mean, Seattle, I believe it was Seattle, had broken their all-time record for heat. They hit like 115, 114, and like 116 3 days in a row. They kept breaking their own record.
And so one of the things that when it comes to climate change, you have a mixture of fossil fuels and stuff like that going on, but you also have climate naturally changes. You have right now the tilt of the Earth, people are saying, is changing.
I remember that.
So, things are starting to change with weather patterns naturally, and because of the unbalance of that mixed in with the human impact of the environment, things are getting crazy. Things are going to be crazy for a while.
Sorry. And
it's just it is now time with Texas. That's kind of the flag that went up, saying, "Hey, maybe now it's time to start investing in these extreme weather, insurances."
Because it's about security, and countries like Norway invest in heating their windmills because it's probably going to get really cold during the winter out there. Obviously, but in a place like Texas, and even in a place like even in like the Northeast or even the Northwest, there it's that security to your infrastructure, and that security is half the battle. Half the battle is getting the money and then building it. The other half is trying to secure it, trying to stop the highways from cracking down after 10 years, trying to make sure that, in the craziest event that we get, freezing temperatures, just freezing, like maybe 20 degrees, where our infrastructure is still able to go even at a limited capacity. But we saw, and plus, by the way, I think it was 20% of the wind turbines in Texas had failed during the ice storm, and that was it. I think it was only 20% failed, the other 80% of capacity, but the other 80% was not enough energy to keep the state going, even in an extreme situation.
I think it was the cities that suffered.
Because
because the ones that draw the most power.
Even rural towns. They're
heat that starts spiking because everyone they don't have
normal
heating.
They had like 20.
So they have electric heat go, so energy usage spikes.
And
so you could have had. I don't know the number specifically, but I'm imagining that you could have had, if you didn't have any of the windmills fail, I imagine the power usage alone that spiked would have been enough to cause a power grid failure.
By the way, I know the number. One person had a $9,000 electric bill for 1 month. Can you imagine taking your debit card out and saying, "Yeah, $9,000. Yeah, that's about right. Here you go." And your energy use has decreased. Your energy use has decreased, and your cost has increased.
Yep.
I pay my utility bills now. I don't know about you guys, but I live
You're like grown up.
I'm a grown up. Yeah. I pay my utility bills, and my roommate came up to me the other day, and he said, "Hey, the energy bill is really high this month. It's like almost double what we usually pay at this time of year." And I looked at him all confused. I'm like, "Why is that? What are you doing? What am I doing? What is this?" He's like, "I don't know. Like maybe you're running your computer too much, or like you leave your fan on during the day."
Oh, he called you out.
Well, yeah.
He called you out.
I'm like, "Well, listen, I've had my computer for the past year, and it's never done this to the bill."
Did you also, your computer just like wasn't working for a while?
Yeah, it wasn't working for a while. Yeah, so like I wasn't even on it. Yeah, I was on like TV, which is less energy. And I was sitting here and we were talking about it, and I bring up, "Hey, I'm seeing these gas prices go up. I think energy is starting to go up in price." And he's like, "You know what? I think that is because I have other friends that are complaining their bills are too high."
And when was this?
And this was a couple months ago. And my roommate hit me up yesterday. And he texted me and said, "Hey, by the way, the energy cost for the month of June and July total is $600. Which it should be around $200.
Yeah,
it should be a lot less.
Wow.
Like I remember,
I I think it was like 160 if I remember my last bill.
Oh yeah.
For the full month, it was like 160.
You guys didn't get utility as part of the rent?
No, because we pay like through a different we get through a
You
different.
want to try to find an apartment?
Dog.
Yeah, no apartment's gonna do that.
I
Dog,
have
I was
a
lucky.
beautiful.
We already talked about this. It doesn't work.
I have a beautiful.
This is the first topic, Josh. Pay attention.
I have a beautiful, loving girlfriend who has an apartment with utilities paid, and it's
Wow, weird
part
flex,
of her
alright.
rent.
Absolute gem because it's a guy who's just isn't he
It's an
just renting
it's an
out-
old. I think he's a vet. He's just like an old vet who likes to smoke pot and hang out, and he's a really
and
really
that's
cool
probably
guy.
his only renting property.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Try to find that anywhere else in a city.
I know it's so hard right now.
Don't find
Oh,
that.
what? You're
Unreal.
not incredibly lucky and benefit from your circumstances, Jack? What? What? Well, I should leave then. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I just situations like that are very hard to come by, and like it sucks. You have rent going up, you have utilities going up. Like the cost of living has, like we talked about at the beginning. You know, you can't afford to live in the cheapest apartment on minimum wage, and I mean, even on top of that, you have to find roommates.
You have to. You literally have to.
Yes, you have to. You have
You're
to
dumping
live on your own anymore.
$1,200 a month. You have to find somebody
and
to split
the
that with.
Sweat.
And the thing that's crazy, and like the thing that like is so hard to wrap your head around, these shady ass apartments that are made, they're in buildings that are super old and weird neighbors, like in the middle of a city and like a bad neighborhood. You need to live there by yourself. A really good paying job. Just buy a house at that point, and then you go to do that, and there's BlackRock.
There's
Yeah,
BlackRock.
Here we are.
Our favorite.
It's actually triple what you thought. And like, I'm not. Like, imagine I work super hard, make 60 grand a year, right? And then I have to by myself, then get an apartment in a moderately nice side of town by myself, maybe with like a partner or a roommate or something like that. That's unreal. Like the expectation of that is insane. It's like those worker houses from back in like the 1800s and like the early 1900s, except it's not associated with the work anymore. It's just part of the natural society.
Oh, you're talking about those like super factories,
yes.
like the Carnegie like neighborhood.
Yes.
I remember that.
It's like that, but like in society, not connected to the businesses. It's because we're paid so little relative to how much stuff costs. And there's a lot of different things. Like I wanted to ask you about this. What do you think is the issue here? Do you think we're not being paid enough, or do you think what we're being paid is not worth what it should be?
I think.
Go ahead.
I think the concept of work should be re-examined for the 21st century, because a perfect example of unrecognized monetarily work is parenthood. One of the first and most important jobs of humanity is the raising of the next generation and ensuring their security. Yeah. We are literal babies and cannot do anything for ourselves for years. We need that support. And that support can be in a form of in a different number of ways. And if you're looking at it at a rent idea, like we can't afford rent, the most direct impact on something like raising rents is trying to ensure that the work that is being outputted is seen as what it is worth. And that has to, and it's as simple as raising the minimum wage, but that has to be a national effort to say the nation of 725 is no longer us. And an interesting thing about our pay as far as like minimum wage goes, we have a very strange culture in America that is not common across the world of tipping, where you go into a restaurant and you tip the waitress and you give her extra money, or him. I shouldn't be specific.
Cancel.
I'm canceled. Well, hey, it was a good first episode, I guess.
Oh,
there's the phone call.
Yeah, don't come back next week.
And we pay these tips where we're subsidizing part of the salary of these workers, and in response, they're supposed to be extra generous, try and get that extra tip. And it's a very odd system that is old and it's concrete right now. And I feel if you want to directly impact the economy of renters, you start with restaurant staff and waiters and waitresses in specific. And it can be as simple as, if you are this big of a company or of a private institution, and you have these people listed as workers, and obviously you'd have to, make sure that's all right and have the right committees behind investigating breaks and stuff like that. But you have to make it so that they're paid well enough so that they can survive on their rent. And taking away the tip economy, while a pretty radical idea, I'm not saying I support it or deny it, but it's a pretty crazy idea that, how many waitresses or waiters do you know that own a literal plot of land with a house on it? And then how many do you know that maybe rent an apartment with a few friends or maybe some coworkers? Being a waiter or waitress is not this 3-figure salary or 6-figure salary job that other industries have.
It depends on the location and where you work too.
Yeah, obviously, if you're in a fancy place like Martha's Vineyard, and you're a waitress, I mean, you still make the same amount of money as a waitress in whatever,
but that's
wherever,
not including tip.
But it's not including tip.
Especially, I'm thinking of that time in Disney where we went to the California grill.
Yes.
And how expensive those meals were, and like if you tip the 20%. That's still, it's the almost the same amount of work. It's the same table.
Yeah.
They have to memorize a wine list and they have to know a lot more about the menu, and it's a little bit more fancy.
And that's more work.
They make a lot. Yeah, it's a lot, because if our tab's like $200 and you got to 20%, that's $40. That's $40 for one table. Or instead of like a diner in town, you'd only make 10 for that table.
Right. So now the idea that. So I actually like that we're talking about this, because it's actually, now that I'm realizing, it's a disparity in location, especially with economics. If you're a Denny's worker in an inner city, making $7.25 and relying on tips, your tip income is going to be a lot less than a $7.25 worker in like Newport, making $30 in tips on each bill. It's a crazy disparity that perpetuates rent prices, especially in places like Martha's Vineyard or Newport, where the housing is so expensive because everything else around it's so expensive. And if you want to be close to work, you got to eat it. And there's very little support except for the generosity of other people. And it would be interesting to see an economy where if you're a waiter or waitress at one of those like really fancy restaurants, you're paid a higher wage, and it's not reliant on tips. And now it's like, oh no, tipping is not compulsory. Tipping is now a luxury. You don't have to tip. We're paying our workers enough so that you don't have to open your wallet and subsidize our salaries, which is it's a radical idea, but I think it's an interesting one.
And the funny thing is when you think about it, tipping basically is us saying, how much do we want to pay extra for this meal, right? Like, we get to kind of choose the final price of what we paid to go out, and
if I'm holding the bill, sorry, dog, it feels bad. I'm a broke college kid. It happens.
Nah, if you can't afford a tip, don't go out. That's
well, you try to be good. You try to give a
if you can't afford a tip, go out.
As someone who worked,
no, that's a true statement though. Can't afford the tip, just don't go out.
Like, if I got no tip or I got a small tip, it was like, I was lucky enough that I did get a full, the minimum wage in our state is higher, and I didn't get a tipped wage. I still had the full minimum wage, but not everyone gets that. The tip wage is like stupid.
It's low. Well, there are some places where it's like $2 an hour.
That's slave labor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, my mom
people
was a waitress, and she said all the time. She's like, before like she met my dad, she tells me about it all the time. That's where we learn how to treat waitstaff, because my mom would always show us like what to do that would make their lives a little easier. She says, they're making $3.75 an hour, and they're kind of thriving that you have a tip. So like, their life kind of sucks.
And it's not $3.75
plates.
It's not, and it's not $3.75 hour work. Like, you are servicing people, the most crazy little animal beasts on the planet that have created all this crazy stuff. You're telling me they're responsible for making sure that we're happy? That is a crazy burden.
That's the crazy thing about it, because if you did, pay them a proper wage, what happens is now the cost of your meal is going to go up, and people then see, oh, I'm paying this much for this amount of food. You're not expected to tip, but because culture says we have to tip, mentality, I feel like there's going to be the struggle between, okay, yeah, they're telling me we don't have to, but you still feel almost guilted to, just because society makes you feel that way of like, I'm not tipping, like there's something wrong with that, or now I'm angry because the price of my meal's so high.
But isn't it weird?
It would increase the price of meals.
But isn't it weird that we are put in a position to be expected to subsidize the salaries of people we do not employ? I do not employ that waitress.
But you going out to eat, you're paying for a meal that is profiting the company that then should go to their paycheck.
So then why can't the profit? So then why can't the profit from that meal get percentage, like a percentage, and given to workers?
That's why it's the price it is, and it's as low as it is now, because they're not forking over so much.
No, I challenge you, because McDonald's offers a $15 minimum wage across the country, and you can buy an entire meal for $3.
Get the flintlocks.
Get
challenged.
The flintlocks. We will duel.
I do want to say
it's not. No, you do, and it also hurts. It also it also hurts small businesses too, because it sucks, because if you want to raise the minimum wage and make sure that people are getting paid a decent amount of money, it's going to fall on these smaller businesses more disparagingly than a company like Amazon or Walmart or McDonald's that already offers a $15 national minimum wage to all of their workers when the national minimum wage is $7.25. And I feel like putting a lot of that pressure on the states themselves and the governors and the state legislatures, that's a lot of pressure to put on a local or state government when it is a federal national issue. It is affecting all different areas of the nation's economy, especially the economy. You have restaurants in rural areas that don't get enough business, even though their prices are low and they pay their workers barely anything.
But is that
that business is
their
still
local economy, or
or
is that an issue specifically with that industry? Because if you want to tackle an industry to try to fix the problem, and you're ignoring everything else that's not drawing the business there, if people don't have money to spend, if you raise the wages for these workers, it's not going to fix the problem. You're not going to pull people in.
Right, in that specific area, you're right. It's not going to help them, because it's not going to pull people in.
That's why I think having the states.
Well, that's why I said, if you're a company at a certain size, if you reach a certain profit margin or a certain yearly income, which can be done, other countries do this, then you can have that type of first of all, openness, because every company releases their quarterly reports every end of every quarter. Every company listed on the NASDAQ and the Dow releases their quarterly results, so it's incredibly transparent. It's very easy to see
at the end of the year too. Like, it's easy to get how much they've made and whatnot. I think it would be an interesting approach to do, almost like especially specifically for the restaurant industry, you could do how many states they're active in, right? If you want to do a federal level, because if they're just local in one state, the state should handle it. Whereas if you are McDonald's and you're in every single state, that's where the federal government should have jurisdiction over a certain authority of the wages and whatnot. And it's still, I think you also have the room for natural competition. Like right now, we are seeing the labor shortage really start. Prices are getting paid,
especially in the food industry that we're talking about. Like, servers are walking out.
Right now.
Entire McDonald's and Subways, I think, have been shut down because all employees just quit at once. Yep. I think there was a KFC where every employee just walked out. So it's happening all over the place right now.
When we went on vacation, there was a Dunkin' Donuts near us that had a sign out front saying closing early, don't have enough staff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hitting home.
Yep. It's like, that was what that hit me. I was like, wow, this is really this is widespread.
And that's a rural community, like rural.
Yeah,
it's right off the highway, and
right.
the access to infrastructure is there, but the traffic, it's just not there.
When we go on vacation, we go camping in really rural areas of New England. So to have that reach that area, that's really alarming. It's not a city. We don't go to the city. We go out to the countryside. That's crazy that it doesn't reach out there.
Yep. So
excuse me, that it does reach out there.
How widespread this is. You have the headlines of like the cities that are having the shortages. It's everywhere. Don't kid yourself. It is happening, And it's something that you now have these companies kind of say, okay, well, in order to run our business, we are going to have to increase the pay. We're going to have to pull people in and play the game of competition, because now we're fighting for workers. We're fighting other businesses for the laborers. And part of the reason and part of the issue is we're still paying people on the unemployment extra money. I think that's fucking bogus.
But that's the leverage. That's the leverage the workers have to fight for a higher pay.
So
Without that, they're forced to go in and say...
I agree with you on that, but they're not workers at that point. They're not helping the economy. They're not a part of the system.
Yeah, it's going to end in August.
I understand that, but that's part of the problem.
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
One of the things I think they should, like, it's tough because you want, for the pandemic, you want people to stay home and whatnot. I don't know if we want to transition a little bit because we've talked about UBI. And we've both kind of been advocates for that.
UBI is short for Universal Basic Income, yep. First introduced by politician Andrew Yang.
It's been introduced before him, but he made it popular.
Yeah, he made it popular.
But one of the things I thought about that, he always wanted to make it, if you're just a citizen, you get it, right? And one of the issues that I have actually come to kind of come to terms with is you do incentivize, the free will of, you have a lot more leverage to bounce between companies. That's not necessarily good for production. You now have constant retraining. That's constant loss, because every time you retrain an employee, you're training a new employee, you lose money.
If you are being
money to hire a new worker.
If you are being hired for a good paying job that, let's say it has really good benefits that are mandated.
This is fiction.
This is fiction. This is pure fiction. Have fun daydreaming about this on your trip.
It's pure hypothetical because it just doesn't. It's hard to get a job like that.
I mean, even like small businesses. There was a story of a small business owner. I believe the state minimum wage was $9.50, and she raised her hourly workers to $15. Totally on her own accord, and she filled up her staff almost immediately. Yep, and now that staff was able to produce the materials and the services to generate the company profit.
That's smart business because
it's investment.
She probably also had proper margins in place and proper revenues flowing in, and probably fudged things around to make sure that she could afford that. Not all small businesses have that luxury.
Nope.
Oh yeah, and then I was going to say,
and that has to do with education.
You raise minimum wage. We have a local pizza shop that I used to work at that it struggles to pay the minimum wage, and the prices for these fucking pizzas are getting stupid ridiculous. But knowing and working there for a while and knowing the cost, actually going out and buying the product that he uses to make the food, he doesn't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that scenario? One of the things with the UBI that I think should kind of change with it is if you're a working citizen, you get universal, you get the basic income.
Well, then
because now you're changing the minimum wage, and the federal government is subsidizing the income of minimum wage. You're not increasing the burden on the small business. You're actually taking it off of them. You're making it so they can put in a little bit less, right? While the employee still makes a living wage.
So to your point about only working people, that would mean that the state would have to declare itself the authority to determine what is seen as work.
It already does.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that already not?
No, that is the market. The market determines work. If I'm willing to pay you $200 to go sit in my driveway and spit on your head, and you do it, I employed you.
Yeah, that's work.
Yes, that's not the feds. How are the feds involved in that?
I think so long as you can get an income, then you are doing work. You know what I mean? Like as long as you get rhythm, a drop in like a drop in your bank account or like a cash flow. You have a consistent kind of like and this is just
you
like
have an employer.
But what about the stay-at-home parents? What about the most important and primal leadership importance of humanity is parenthood.
Right now, what just passed?
The child tax credit, which is a form of UBI. Yes. It's a form. It's not the same thing.
And that form, that addresses that issue. I don't think UBI is supposed to address a blanket issue.
Yeah, it's not supposed to
cover everything. I think when it comes to solving minimum wage that hurts small businesses, how do we – because small businesses is the entrepreneurship. We want – that's the American dream.
That's the old entrepreneurship. If you have a
Has
brick
to
and
be old
if you've
entrepreneurship.
bought a brick and mortar store in the past 2 years, I send you all the luck in the world, and I hope that you have great success. Because unfortunately, if you've got a phone and you've got half a personality and you're a little funny, you could make probably double being an influencer on literally any social media platform you can think of.
Part of that age of entrepreneurship.
And
going off of what Jack said, sorry to cut you off. I was thinking about it. You're saying that it shouldn't be covered a blanket issue, right?
Yep.
So that to me signifies that UBI needs a UBI committee in order to function, to have people that look at these small issues to then decide if that's covered by UBI, whether that be through a mandate, whether that be through state mandates and stuff. How would you guys do that? Like, how would you organize a UBI committee? Would it kind of be like the Supreme Court? Would there be agents in every state?
Well,
how, like, would it be like, would it replace the IRS, or would it be kind of like the IRS? What would you guys do for a UBI centric thing where there are exceptions to rules, where there are things that it can't cover but should cover? What would you guys do about those issues?
From like the 1,000 hours I have of listening to Andrew Yang's voice, because I'm a psychopath, the way that you could establish something like that, if you wanted to go that route, is you would build a committee within Congress, within the lower house of representatives and the Senate. That's kind of, like the Foreign Relations Committee, the National Security Committee, the, Train Your Dog Committee, all these different committees that are in Congress.
That's a committee.
Hey, I wouldn't put it past them. Hey, you got to learn how to train your dog. Imagine you're a congressman and your dog's not trained. You'd be a laughingstock.
Well, you have to have the taxpayers pay for your stuff.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
I would be shocked, honestly.
But that's one thing you can do. I think that the idea of UBI already extends a lot of economic power to the federal government, but that's a trade-off to the economic benefit that it could bring to the citizens. So and this is my own personal opinion, I'm not saying you guys are wrong, but this is how I see a UBI.
But you're wrong.
Of course I'm wrong. I'm a different opinion. But what I think of it is, if you extend not only the ability to first of all, hyper targeting is really smart. Like the Bureau of Labor and Statistics in DC is a madhouse plethora of data that the feds could use to actually solve a lot of problems in this country. I feel like
that's a joke in itself. Feds solving problems.
Well, it all stems back to Ronald Reagan with his inaugural address saying government. What was it? It was
the worst thing you could hear is, "I'm with the government. I'm here to help."
Well, I think that was an interview. I think in the address he said something.
He said that.
Yeah.
One of the few things I agree with Reagan about is, "I'm with the government. I'm here to help." It's one of the worst things you could hear.
Well, let's think about the institutions that were in place before Reagan. Who was president before Reagan? It was Jimmy Carter.
I think it was after Reagan.
Yeah, I think he was.
Or am I just too? Jack, can you look that up?
Because
the president's list right now.
It was Eisenhower, then Kennedy. After Kennedy,
it was
Lyndon Johnson.
Yep.
After Johnson was Nixon.
Yes.
Oh, someone's breaking in.
Someone posting cringe.
I love that video game.
No, I was wrong. We were wrong. Jimmy Carter was before.
Was he?
Yep. Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
Then Bush.
So
Bush was after.
I really only know the presidential list from Bush Senior onward, because that's when we were born, and that's when there are events that we know that
Senior.
Impact. Well, not Bush Senior, but
that was our era.
That was our era, yeah, because it's Bush Senior, and then Clinton, and then Junior, and then Obama, and then Trump, and then Biden. We know that because that's our modern history.
So let's think of the term between Richard Nixon to Jimmy Carter. Richard Nixon had Watergate and Vietnam, two disastrous things that could ever happen to a president, and he resigned. It was a very huge fail of the institution.
Epic.
And then you had the situation with the Bay of Pigs with JFK, and literally the president of the United States had to come out and say, "This happened under my watch. I take full responsibility of it, and I'm sorry." And then with Jimmy Carter, we had the Iranian hostage crisis that Reagan then came in and sort of threatened his way to solving the problem, which it worked, managed to work. Let's get it. But we already saw a distrust in institution. And then when Reagan came along, especially with that rhetoric, you're only perpetuating the distrust, but it's fair. But it's also not how I feel helping the situation, because yes, the government in its capacity right now is deadlocked. It's riddled with political infighting in both parties. You've got, the squad and the centrist Democrats trying to fight for some type of control in the House. And then you have, the Trump wing of the party and the more centrist wing of the Republican Party trying to go through their own personal political battles. And in the meantime, they're trying to run a country. And we can see, like, with Dr. Fauci changing his tone on masks, how originally said, oh, we don't need masks. They're not really that important. Turns out they're very important, and we really did need them. And then the Fauci emails that were released about gain of function research to the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Did you see Rand Paul absolutely
smoke Fauci? For those of you that have not seen that, YouTube Rand Paul, Dr. Fauci, Senate committee video.
It's the newest video. Rand Paul got right in Fauci's face. He essentially accused Fauci.
Wasn't in his face. He was
figuratively got in his face.
Yeah, if only American politics was that.
Oh, imagine it's like American politics, WrestleMania.
I would actually pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we would actually figure out, like, if there was like established lore for every candidate that was like really obscure. That'd be pretty cool.
It's called their life.
Yeah, true. Or early history.
Like, look at their life. There's the lore.
But he essentially talked to Dr. Fauci, and he said, Dr. Fauci, you said in your last congressional hearing that there was no correlation, like no funding between like your institutions and the Wuhan institutions, and we have proof of that. It was false through the leaked emails. Would you like to retract your statement? And I'm reminding, like, Rand Paul is so funny. He's like, I keep saying, I'm reminding you, it's a felony to lie here. Do you want to retract? And then Fauci's like, Fauci acted, and this could just be me seeing it through rose-tinted glasses as someone who doesn't really support Fauci. And I love Rand Paul most of the time. Fauci acted like someone caught in a lie who was trying to deflect
because he was
blame.
Yeah.
Well, because
playing term games, because he was saying it wasn't my organization that funded it, but it's a branch of, and it's something he's still a part of, but it's not directly. And that's
like the shell company loopholes.
But now here's the thing. Here's the thing. Who used the chaos of the Trump administration to allow gain of function research to be funded to foreign institutions? The head of the NIH, Dr. Fauci.
Yep.
He was in part of this. And listen, like, you can draw your pitchforks and torches or whatever. I'm not going to join you. I personally did not really expect a whole lot of trust out of, Dr. Fauci himself. Whenever you see somebody all over the news, like they're the next big thing in politics, I personally try to tread carefully, especially with someone that is pushed around from CNN to MSNBC, and all these different networks, and praised as this all-knowing person that we should trust. Oh, we should trust Dr. Fauci and the CDC. Well, let's watch them gain our trust. Oh, they lied. And they lied. And just for people that don't know, there is a thing called gain of function research in virology. And the purpose of gain of function research is to alter different bacteria and viruses to test them to see if they can jump between species, be more contagious, be more deadly. Yes. This research is incredibly dangerous.
And supposedly through those emails, it proved that Fauci was like essentially like through like semantics, like his company was funding a company that did that gain of function research on COVID and made it a bat only illness to transmit in humans, and then it got out by accident from what we know so far.
Well, I know for certain that it was released that there were bats in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, at least in 2017. That we know for sure because there was a news story that was done in the Wuhan Institute of Virology about the center, and there were live bats seen within the institution. And something that you kind of said about how the gain of function research was used on COVID, we unfortunately actually don't know. All we know is that the Wuhan Institute of Virology got the money, because obviously we will never know what the Wuhan Institute of Virology did with that money. The CCP will never let those documents leak. Never.
Like someone was going to have to die for that to be in the public
eye. A lot of
people
people would have had to get really hurt.
To go back to what we said earlier, I don't even think it would matter. those people would die for nothing. China has this invincibility shield. If the UN tried to do anything, they wouldn't be able to, because number one, the balls of the UN is the US. And two, if they destroy China and like some miraculous miracle, the entire world versus China, number one, that wouldn't happen. Russia and North Korea would be at their side to do a World War III, World War I situation of the alliance system.
Yeah. Well, the UN
as well as like you attack China, the world's economy is gone. You destroyed the world's economy. No one can afford a loaf of bread. Everyone's hurting because you decided to attack China. Yeah, it was the right thing to do, but is it the right thing to do in the long run with this? It's tough to debate. It's a tough debate. It's hard.
The heavy cost.
Exactly. Yeah. Is it worth the cost? Yes.
The justice.
Is it worth like tanks in the street lining up for bread? Is it worth something like that?
One of the things that we need to figure out is how, if we do actually want to stand and bring justice to the world, it's going to be a long game, because we have to make sure that we put ourselves in the proper positions to defend ourselves, defend our allies, have our allies defend us, and make sure that we can approach something like that, where if China did maliciously release a virus to the world, we can't just let that go.
Well,
it can't just be, yeah. No big deal.
We know that happened. Yeah.
Thing is, like, there's such little actual chance of them purposefully leaking it. Thing is, I can see a world where the Wuhan Institute of Virology got this crazy grant from the federal government of the U.S. where it said, hey, even though Trump's anti-China, we're going to give you all this money to research gain of function for viruses. Wuhan is like, this is awesome. We are going to use this all the time. Even though in 2016, the Wuhan Institute of Virology was cited by the Obama administration as having safety and security issues within the institute and within the actual lab. So the possibility, and I said this to my dad at the beginning of the pandemic when the lab leak theory versus the Wuhan market theory were both circulating. And I thought to myself, what is the possibility? And this was obviously before gain of function research was talked about, but now it adds more context. What if this institute was using this money, doing exactly what they were supposed to do with the money, which obviously wasn't good. This research is so dangerous. And if it had a link to this, we see the effects, but we obviously do not know if there was a link. And then all of a sudden, safety parameters are not followed. Somebody gets sick. Actually, it was released that 2 people at the Wuhan Institute of Virology got incredibly ill to the point of near hospitalization. I think one of them was hospitalized in October and November of 2019.
Which is when COVID was born.
But it's born out the womb.
It was, yeah. That was when like it first started infecting people.
Yeah, that's when it started spreading.
In Wuhan,
yeah.
which is the
so what's the possibility of a safety procedure being broken and somebody gets sick and then they go and pick up dinner or lunch at the market? That it's like going to Stop and Shop when you work 2 blocks away. And now you have all of these, and then it just spreads and it goes everywhere and everywhere. You know, I understand why people might be scared and fearful that this was in some capacity, excuse me, manipulated to be more contagious. And it's a very contagious disease. You know, the sad part is we don't know, and we probably won't know for many, many decades before real documents from our federal government and whatever the political situation is, real documents from both China and the US would have to be released to actually know what happened with COVID.
It'll come out when we are both too old and senile to do anything about it. So when we are the ones who are like, oh, we remember that and that caused us a lot of strife, and our grandkids are going to go say, okay, grandpa, like here's your like check for the reparation money for what happened to you. Like we're you know, like, oh, can I buy the new Xbox with it? You know what I mean? Like that's what it'll be. It'll get brushed aside because we aren't the fighting generation anymore. And then the fighting generation of that time will either be like just like we were talking about earlier, everything connects, man. Yeah. Politics is massive circles. It's gonna either that generation's gonna be we're gonna get to a point where the new generation is gonna be a constant fighting generation, or it's gonna be a generation that doesn't even want to fight, and whoever the ruling power is just do whatever they want.
Well, there was Thomas Jefferson, our 3rd president. He, in his personal writings, he, and I believe some public writings too, was very radical, and not a lot of people in his time were very appreciative of his idea, and I know for a good reason why. He believed that every 25 years a new government should be instituted so that each generation can rule themselves. Obviously it's crazy, but if you look at it at a more metaphorical sense, every 25 years there is some type of revolution. Every generation has their own fight to fight. Some generations might have to fight Vietnam and like Agent Orange, like Vietnam vets coming home with massive damaging effects to their body. Some generations have to fight massive economic instability, like we've had, like our parents have had to, with the internet bubble crashing, with the 2008 housing market crashing, and then COVID. And now our generation is probably going to be fighting the fights of things like voting rights, statehood rights, as well as like climate change, and actually having trust. Our generation's fight is rebuilding trust.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that, because right now we're in trustless, and like a trustless relationship doesn't stand. And right now, that's why there's such hot tension between the government and the people, the police and the people. People don't want to trust anyone. And I'm really thankful you brought that up, because that's a perfect segue to the last topic we had in our list today. I thought we weren't going to make it because it's coming up, like we're what time is it around, Jack?
It is 12:20.
12:20. So we are coming up on our time at 1 o'clock. I wanted to make sure we got this last point in. Cuba. Cuba.
Viva la revolución.
Viva la revolución. Right now in Cuba, we have a lot of people who are trying to flee the Cuban communist government as it's falling apart, since, Fidel Castro is no longer around. We have, Trump's not playing hardball anymore. If anyone's been paying attention, and you can verify this on Twitter because Biden officially tweeted about it, Cuban refugees are blocked from coming into the United States. Cuban refugees cannot get in there. To quote President Biden, if you are Cuban and you're in the water, you are not coming to the United States. Right? But they're letting in all kinds of immigrants, like refugees and other either illegal immigrants
from
or illegal
other
immigrants
places.
From other places, especially down south in Mexico and South America. And I saw this on TikTok, of all places, politics TikTok, made me really think about it and start to kind of come up with my own thoughts about this. The Cubans are escaping communism, right? They see the regime that it is. So they're coming here, and they are not going to vote for the party of communism. The party of, right now, it's kind of the party of soft socialism. They're not going to vote for Democrats. They are all going to vote for Republicans to keep as most of a capitalist society as possible. Meanwhile, you have these people at the border who are coming in down south who are going to be voting blue once they come in, because they're the party of acceptance, of letting people in, of letting their people in. This kind of non-consistency with allowing refugees in, I believe, should be grounds for a charge of voter suppression and voter influence. Whereas they are pumping it trying to open more borders, trying to get as many people in as we can to swing Texas blue, a red stronghold state, while blocking people from coming into Florida to make it a stronghold red state of its own. Florida usually leans red, but it can flip. Yeah, it seems like it's a human rights violation. And it's, and I am all for strong security at the border, because I hate, brown people who live lower than me on the equator. Yeah, of course. No, you freaking idiot. Absolutely not. I am so for strong border security, because there are a lot of illegal drugs that come up that destroy communities. A real statistic.
Please don't get me started about the opioid epidemic.
Oh, it's an epidemic.
No, because it's not like
a lot of it comes through Mexico and southern borders.
Well, really quick context. Like, if you really want to talk about the opioid crisis, you have to talk about the mass number of doctors that were prescribing people OxyContin and all these crazy perks for almost nothing. I mean, hey, you broke your arm. Take this bottle of Oxy home. I make a shit ton of money.
The Pharmacist on Netflix is an amazing documentary that shows at the local level what that did to certain communities, especially in New Orleans.
It destroyed them, and then it perpetuated these illegal drugs. And now that the government finally stepped up, and different companies have had to pay massive fines, no one went to jail, and now that we finally have a monetary justice for the opioid epidemic, now we have the total issue that now that all of these perks are gone, now all of these illegal substances like heroin and especially fentanyl are littering streets, especially in homeless communities. Homeless communities are getting ripped apart by these opioids.
And they're brought up through insanely inhumane practices, insane ways of smuggling. I saw a statistic the other day, 80% of women that come up through the Mexican border are raped along their journey. That's disgusting.
Yeah,
and people bring that statistic up and they say, oh, it's ICE, it's government officials, all this. No, it's the people, it's these.
Some of it could be.
And there has been issues of that. And those people should be processed to the full extent of the law.
Percentage
that's so high, and that can't just be government officials.
And it's cartels.
And,
it's the cartels.
I think they're called. Are they dingoes or something else?
They're called
Diegos?
coyotes.
Coyotes. There you go. Coyotes who are hired to take these people across. Of course, they're going to take advantage because it's like, they're at their end of their rope. They have no other choice. And on the topic of other people getting abused at that border, a real statistic, love him or hate him,
not a fake one, by the way.
Donald Trump, in his first 2 years as presidency, through his increase of border security under his administration, has had more arrests and prosecutions of human traffickers, child traffickers, and sex traffickers than Obama's in all 8 of his 2 years versus 2 terms. Because of the
no doubt he militarized ICE.
Yes.
And he tried to promise 12 million deportees, that's
a really hard number to hit.
Yeah, man. If you hit 2 million, I'll give you props. But wow, man, 12 million is a big number.
Yeah, but we have there's so much crime that goes on down there that not a lot of people want to acknowledge or think is possible.
And you know what's crazy?
It's something that we need this border security, and and if it's listen, if there's a woman who comes up with her kids and it's genuine, they're like, I just want a better life, I hate the cartels, I will be the first person to shake her hand when she passed that citizenship test. Welcome to America.
And it takes a long
time. It does, but it's in the interest of us. We can't just let people in that will hurt people in our own country.
You want to make sure that
it sucks, and I hate that we have to play bouncer sometimes, but it's what's best for us and everybody. And I'm sorry, but as soon as you make it in, I love it when people come in, like those posts on Reddit, and it's like pics, like I became an American citizen today from Guatemala, from Chile, and people in the comments, oh, conservatives are real mad. No, conservatives are ecstatic because you did the right thing. You came over the right way. We love new Americans. Yes, we love new Americans. And it's funny because the people who are the most vehemently against illegal immigrants are the legal immigrants. I knew someone in college. He was born in the Ukraine, came over. He speaks fluent Russian. He was an awesome guy. I went to college with him, and we were watching TV one time in the cafeteria, and it was about Donald Trump's plans for the border. And I turned to him and I said, hey, man, as an immigrant, as someone who has come in and wasn't born in our country, what do you think about this kind of stuff? Just because I'm thinking, I have my opinions, but I was never in the shoes of someone who wasn't in this country.
Right. Especially from the Ukraine.
Exactly. So I asked him, how do you think? And he went on this whole rant about how he's like, I can't stand it. My family worked their butts off to get here. I had to learn English to come here, and this is awful. And yet these people are given a free pass, and then they could perform crimes, and they get sent back, and they come back in, and then, you got the drugs and the gangs and stuff, and they go off, right? They go absolutely off. So I do believe the security is necessary. It's unpleasant sometimes, and it's unfortunate, and sometimes reality is, and it sucks, but we have to.
You have to be firm.
Yes, we have to.
You're being thorough, and you're not letting any bad people do cracks.
And I want that consistency of letting people in, as well as having strong security in Florida for those Cubans trying to escape the brutal grip of communism, and they want to come in, but Biden won't let them in. He's very vehemently says no. And it makes you think, why is he not that consistent? Because it's I mean, if there's a better explanation, can one of you guys give me one? It sounds like voter suppression.
I think it honestly, I think it has to do with just so much geopolitics, because all right, so let's look at Cuba. There were those pro-democracy protests. There were also pro-communist protests that the mainstream media did not even recognize or talk about. They totally blacked it off the air entirely. So that's a whole counter protest that's totally off the map and not given any legitimacy. Even if you disagree with communism, people marching in the streets for the support of their leader or in dissent of their leader, that's a natural right of ours, and we should support that for others as well.
100%.
And look at Ron DeSantis. governor of Florida, Florida, big Cuban population, he wants, and this is a stretch, and I'm not trying to solidify anything, but the geopolitics of that is now Ron DeSantis, maybe he can't quote, I'm using a bad term for lack of a better word, like milk the issue of the Cuban protests. Yeah. Now it's like, hey, that can't be milked. We've nipped this in the butt. We're going to look strong on immigration, even though we are just setting ourselves up to look like a hypocrite, just look like a straight up hypocrite because of geopolitical battles. I love you guys. I need to use the bathroom. I will be right back. Please continue without me.
So, and something about that with Governor DeSantis and stuff, I agree with that, wanting to make sure that politicians don't milk issues to the point where they have to get it. But is it worth spiting this one governor to make sure these people that are like fleeing crises can't come over? And I know that's the argument for the Mexican border immigration. And like I said earlier, I am so for legal immigration. If you absolutely need to come over here and you're having issue and you claim refugee or migrant status, and it's because you're escaping something, get over here. We got you. But there has to be a security vet, because if you have
one of the things that I think makes it hard for a legitimate process to take place is we have a very outdated system to become a citizen, and because it takes so long, you have refugees. It's a very it's an immediate threat. Like people are in danger. Their lives aren't sustainable. They're looking for a better life. And
Jack, is there anything going on the monitor right now?
Like as of what?
Like, do you want to swing over to Josh's seat for a second? We've yet to get him a camera. This is Jack, our producer, as well as voice off camera. Welcome to the air, Jack.
What's going on?
That's why we have 3 people.
Exactly.
As soon as Josh gets back, I'm going too.
Yeah, we'll cycle through.
Yeah, we'll cycle through.
So I think having such a long process when it comes to immigration makes it so you have the encouragement of crossing it illegally. Who wants to wait 8 years?
Oh yeah,
to become a citizen?
And like, and it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but like, especially with the exchange rate to pesos, as well as what you can earn.
Yep.
And like, I'm willing to wait 8 years to save up enough money in a cartel controlled area. You know what I mean? Like that is unreasonable to some people. Josh has returned. Josh going to keep our conversation going. Josh, you can take my seat. I just got to run to the bathroom too.
I am now the producer behind
Come on
the camera.
Screen, kid. Get over here. I came over here.
Continue talking.
I'll give you your notes back because this is your stuff. You. I'm just the fill-in. I'm keeping the seats hot.
Welcome. You know what I mean? Yeah, welcome to the podcast, Jack. There was something that I realized going to the bathroom is that one of the things about the Cuban issue that we're really not talking about is Cuba has unfortunately been on the receiving end of massive embargoes by the United States for the better part of 60 years.
We've really ruined them ourselves.
And what are the pro-democracy protesters screaming for? They're screaming for food and medical supplies, 2 things that are unfortunately embargoed on them by the United States.
Yep.
And try going to the UK, France, or Germany, or one of these other, more progressive countries and say, hey, we're really hurting. We need help. And they're like, do you see who doesn't like you over there? That's a whole big game of basketball I don't want to play.
Yeah, they don't want to be involved in it. They're not going to be willing to help. And because you've isolated this whole country and you've refused to give them help, you really
and it's radicalizing them. It's radicalizing them to further go into the depths of communism when, I don't agree with communism. Lenin and Stalin tried so hard to make their own forms of communism work, and it couldn't withstand the economic power of capitalist United States.
Yep.
In that time frame, who knows how crazy history would have changed with a few different events happening, but that's a philosophical question for another day. What the reality is that these people are calling for food and medicine, and if they don't get food and medicine, well, they're going to get even more angry, and more nefarious powers within Cuba may attempt to gain power, just like we're seeing what's going on in Haiti. The president of Haiti is assassinated, and now these federation of gangs are trying to take control because of this massive power vacuum.
The big fear is you have all these gangs and these dark groups that you open up that vacuum, you don't know who's going to fill that slot.
And the U.S. tries to fill it.
The U.S. they're going to try. They would try, and they probably will try. Right?
They're trying in Haiti right now. They have the FBI went down because the just so people know, the president of Haiti was assassinated. I believe it was last week. It was a very tragic incident involving Colombian militants as well as a few American citizens that were captured after the raid and the assassination of the president. The person that took over it's all a big mess. The person that eventually took over was a U.S. backed person, and he took control. Now there is no parliament in Haiti; it was dispersed. There's the person that was supposed to replace Moise, that was the president's name. He died of COVID in last month. He died of COVID in June, a month before his president was assassinated.
That's sketchy.
And they have multiple constitutions, so who knows who the actual successor is. But the U.S. has played a large part in the investigation and the collaboration between the U.S. federal government and the Haitian police and the Haitian security forces. They've made this I shouldn't say crazy because it's what they're saying, and this is an official institution that we should trust.
Yeah,
just saying.
Not trusting our own government this whole time.
I don't know what we're talking about. We're crazy. But what I'm trying to say is, what this all kind of started and ending with is, people's instability is not a call for the gain of power. It is a call for stability.
Yeah.
Stability does not come in the form of establishing a dictator that you like because he lets your banana farms make the U.S. government and the U.S. private industry massive profit. We want stability for these people because they're human beings. They want food and medicine. Let them have food and medicine. Let the doctors who went to school there in this crazy educational system that they have, where they focus on medical work, and they were able to help. Like minimize an AIDS spread within Cuba and within Africa. They have incredible doctors out of Cuba. Let them have the resources to heal their people. But now we're getting on the realms of, we're going to support, or we're not even supporting them. We're literally taking the chains off of their throat. Yeah. Their arms and legs are still attached at the hip to the wall with chains, but they can finally breathe. And it's food and medicine.
It's not like they're getting it for free either. It's
not even like luxuries.
It'd be trade. Right now they can't do that. So
and
when you restrict that with a country, you're just gonna strangle. You're gonna chokehold them, and you hold that power over them, like you said, because you want those banana farms. You want those profit margins that that kind of monetary benefit over the human lives. You're seeing what's happening because of that. This is all because of these restrictions we put on them. It doesn't end well for the Cuban people, right? You end up hurting the people of the country, and they're going to.
I would rather prefer the communists fail on their own than the U.S. try to push them into the dirt, because then we can see, hey, look,
because then if they fail on their own, we can say, hey, look, they failed on their own. Therefore, what we're saying is right. But instead, the United States has to get in there and ensure they fail. Whereas instead of
you taint it,
and if they benefit,
you taint it. Absolutely, you make it not a real victory. You made it a cheated victory.
Yep.
And even if they benefit from these things, and they're able to grow their wealth or whatever, good. It's not good to have people I understand we all have our political differences. I don't like communism. I think that it's an old idea that was thought of in good faith, but it has been perverted by a lot of power grabby people. Vladimir Lenin literally took a militia group, stormed the castle of Tsar Nicholas I, and killed his family. They sent them to the gulags, and they died.
Yep.
That's what Lenin's power grab was. He wasn't elected. He wasn't appointed prime minister. He took over and then walked out onto the balcony and said, I am your new leader, to the entirety of people. It's not a democratic process. And we can let these bad systems fail, but let's let them fail on their own so that it can die. No more of this, because the U.S. has had massive involvements in left-wing governments across the world getting affected, disbanded, breaking down political instability because of things like the CIA, things like overreach in private industry, like we mentioned with those, like with banana farming. I believe that was more in, I don't think that was Cuba. I think that was on South America. I don't think that was on any of the islands. But anyway, like the point still stands. Like, you're right. We are putting these people's lives at risk. They're not getting the medicine they need. They're not getting the food to literally survive. It's not like they have Stop and Shops full of food like we do. Like, there's rations. They can't get medical supplies. People with cancer, they're done. There's no chance. You can't get that type of
infections.
medicine.
Hey, you try to get antibiotics. Like,
they have to make it there or pray that the UN will help them out, because if you have food and medical embargoes on a country, that is a violation of the Geneva Convention. The U.S. is doing that against Cuba. They're doing that against Iran, and I believe they're doing it to North Korea too. But obviously, North Korea is just crazy.
North Korea is a whole. Yeah,
listen. We can't. North Korea is its own episode, because I love those documentaries where the guys go into like Pyongyang and they get to look around and they literally get to go in and see this
stuff for the first time. Yeah.
Hey man, there was a guy who tried to steal a picture of Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il out of his hotel room, and he was kept in prison for like 2 years. The U.S. had to like get him out. Like, hey, let him out, or we're gonna get pissed off. Like, this is really, really bad. Like, that's like a journalist. This is really dangerous. There's a better way we can handle this. And I'm fairly certain it was like years and years before he was eventually let out.
I gotta make that point for what they do.
This was a long time ago when I used to watch a website called Current. They were talking about these 2 journalists that got freed from North Korea, I think because they recorded something or took a picture that they shouldn't have or whatever.
Yep.
And they were in jail for a long time. I think like it was during the Obama, I think the first Obama term.
Mm-hmm.
Obama went down and like personally got them out.
Personally, he went to the actual cell and was like, "My son, you are freed now." That would be sick, dude. He was the
pay for to see that,
yeah. Imagine you're in
the exact negotiations, and he was like, "Listen, they're journalists, let them go."
Mm-hmm.
And they got off, and the first person they met on the plane to go back home was President Obama.
That's crazy.
What a
time ago, but I do remember that where like they will imprison journalists. We watched this documentary one time, Josh, me and you, back in high school.
I'm actually gonna pause real quick.
Swap seats.
Go.
Hold on, let's Drew, why don't you hold that thought? Let's let you guys switch seats real quick. We have to play musical chairs. We don't have a break, so this is our break. You get to watch us be monkeys and play musical chairs. And there's monkey number 2.
First episode, everybody. We're gonna figure out breaks next time.
Yeah, we don't need breaks. We're men. We got this.
So
we're grown-ups.
As I was saying, there have been a lot of times we watched this documentary in high school. There are these journalists that went into North Korea they went in documenting an eye surgeon that was going in to clear the cataracts. Yeah,
I remember this.
I remember this. It was a doctor coming in to clear cataracts, and he performed 1,000 surgeries, I think, in like 3 days of cataracts like replacements.
Mm-hmm.
And the documentary was initially about him to show like, oh, this is what a doctor does, but it was a side project kind of to actually show what it's like in North Korea. And I remember like one of the most striking things to me was a cameraman laid down in front of a statue of Kim Jong-il to get a shot, to get him in the frame.
Yep.
And a guard came over and screamed at him, and they kept saying over and over, "Where like you could get thrown in jail. Like we are seriously considering locking you up. Like apologize.
You're disrespecting the supreme leader
and
by
he's
laying
like,
down.
dude, I'm laying down so I can get him in shot. How is it disrespect? Yeah, they gave him the whole thing, and it was an American doctor that came over to the North Korean border to do these surgeries, and at the big reveal, so he would do the surgeries all day, and then at night, all those patients would come back together in the same room, and they would all take off their eye bandages, and we'd be able to see like their live reactions of being able to see again because they're so nutrient deficient. They work in salt mines a lot, so they're constantly getting stuff in their eyes. So they're gonna have really bad cataracts. he fixed 1,000 people. An American doctor restored the eyesight to 1,000 people, and almost all of the people that got their eyesight restored thanked Kim Jong-il for the opportunity to get their eyes fixed. And a lot of them were saying, I'm going to now work twice as hard in the salt mines to kill those dirty American dogs, your wisdom, even though a dirty American dog just gave them their eyesight back. And they saw nothing wrong with what they were saying. They didn't think at all like, hey, like maybe we should think of Americans differently. They're so ingrained. It's insanity.
Now I want you to think about those people that were allowed to be a part of this. You said they worked in salt mines, so they're not wealthy. They're lower class, workers that don't have any political influence. What are the odds that they were actually given freedom of expression in that moment to say thank you to anything except for the supreme leader and to say these crazy things?
Well, and I think that
because most things in North Korea, when you're talking about American tourism, a lot of things are, unfortunately, they can be fabricated and staged. There are plenty of documentaries about North Korea where people go into restaurants and they're the only persons in there. They have grand shows for journalists and for politicians entering North Korea, but the room is empty except for the one person and the camera guy. The amount of wealth that people have to spend on luxuries is not really there. Their freedoms are suppressed. Their speech is suppressed. Their ideas are suppressed. And, I think I'd be shocked hearing anything different out of those people because of, we are able to say, hey, the FBI is involved with the Amy Whitner thing, and we don't know the extent that the FBI informants did. We don't know what they were given in response. We can say all these things without the feds breaking down the door within 2 minutes of this podcast and telling us to turn off. In North Korea, it's like, you're gone. There's 10 websites in North Korea that you're allowed to see. 10. That's it. They have a search engine, a streaming service of some kind that streams pro-communist propaganda.
It has to be approved North Korean.
Because it's all
media.
state ran.
Yeah,
the internet there is state ran. It's state censored, and
you're not gonna be able to get the Hunt for Red October or something like that. You're not gonna be able to get anything.
Yeah, it's like trying to get Red Dawn in Russia.
Yeah,
or Black Ops 2 in China. Remember that? Remember when Black Ops 2 was banned from China because it portrayed China as the aggressors and as the enemy and stuff like that? Hey, I didn't see Germany banning World at War or Call of Duty 2 or Call of Duty Big Red.
I believe they actually had to change the graphics.
Okay, so they had to censor it.
I know,
so they didn't ban
in Germany it's illegal to portray anything Nazi-like. It's also illegal to name your son Adolf.
What?
Yes.
Dude, that's crazy.
Real.
I understand. It's a similar situation we're facing right now with the resurgence of Confederacy loyalty in southern states and within certain groups.
I never understood that. Maybe because I'm a northerner.
We're unionists. We're unionists,
we're
unfortunately.
I never understood the huge. I'm also super anti-government. Obviously we talked about everything. It's just I don't know. I've never understood the Confederates. Woohoo! I think their flag looks kind of all right sometimes.
It's a battle flag. It's not even their state flag.
I like the X. I think that's kind of cool. But other than that, I'm just kind of I don't know what people like about this, other than just telling the government to F off. Don't get me wrong. I love telling the government to fuck off. But I just don't. I don't know. I'd never understood that. That was just never. I would love for someone who's Southern to explain that in the comments or
a lot of it.
Something. I genuinely don't get it.
A lot of it I feel has to do with culture. If you grow up in a town that was big in Jim Crow, they had a Klan in the 50s and the 40s and the 60s, and the town really hasn't changed. The laws have changed, but the culture hasn't changed. And it goes back to that. What we kind of mentioned briefly earlier, the indoctrination of young people and especially young men. You go to Klan rallies, how many women, well, obviously you can't see them, they're wearing the hoods, but, if you were to go to Klan rally, how many women would you see in relation to how many men? You might see 70% men, 30% women. You might see even greater percentages for men. And that indoctrination, and, it's culture, it's the upbringing of people, but it's also the indoctrination into culture. And you can indoctrinate people into positive cultures, like being positive and supporting people and all that good stuff. You can also indoctrinate people into hateful things and unfortunately, Confederate loyalty is synonymous with racism and the advent of slavery and like derogatory use of words against like African Americans and brown people and Jews especially as well.
Yes.
So I feel like if we had somebody who was a Confederate loyalist, like who has like the stars and bars in their room and they're like totally in it, how many people like that would say, well, I grew up like my parents were like that, my neighbors were like that, like the community was like that. It was a part of the culture, just like how up here we're raised in a more progressive area where we're more tolerable of people. We might not agree with them. We might not like what they're doing, but that tolerance is the key notion. And if your culture or your system does not have that tolerance, then, you get tied like to political leaders, especially like propaganda, like the statues. And look, it sucks because like that's a part of our history. That is what I feel is the second most important conflict in American history. The first was obviously our own revolution. The second was the preservation of our union.
Yes.
There's nothing, I mean, apart from starting the damn thing, there's nothing more important than keeping it together.
The revolution and the Reconstruction are definitely two of the most important moments in American history that shape what we are today.
And you're right, dude, Reconstruction too, because Reconstruction was supposed to be entirely different. After Lincoln was assassinated, Andrew Johnson came in. Yeah, it was Andrew Johnson. It wasn't Jackson. Andrew Johnson came in, and he totally flipped the switch on everything. The Emancipation Proclamation was already passed. There's nothing you could do. However, there was land promised to former slaves of Southern plantation owners. Johnson nicked it right in the butt. And that's why when we were in high school, there was a lot of discussion, and even a little bit today, about reparations, because Reconstruction was totally rattled after that, after Johnson took office. And it was a choice by Lincoln to pick a Southern Democrat who was in favor of these segregation policies and slavery, to unify the Union after the Civil War. An honorable action by an honorable man. And unfortunately, John Wilkes Booth, he pressed the trigger, and Andrew Johnson came in, and all of these things got changed up, and it's still affecting us today, where even now in 2016 and 2018 and 2021, we're still talking about reparations of some kind for descendants of slaves. But it sucks because like it feels so far gone that like targeted reparations are going to ignite that fervor again in the Confederate loyalist camp. And we're going to see it. And, the numbers of people might not have changed. It still might be the same communities, but they get more active. You see them more. They're out in the streets. They're waving the flags. They're doing the things. And they're trying to, they're getting hyped up by trying to be pushed. Well, how they feel is pushed down, even though it's, in my view, it's just the times continuing.
Right.
It's the natural course of our Constitution to change.
And I think, just personally, based on my own experience, I feel like if reparations were given, number one, there'd be a bunch of belly aching from all kinds of people.
Yep.
All kinds of people would say, and like we made that point earlier. We weren't around for this. We weren't around for any of these atrocities. We don't.
Yeah, that's kind of the mainstream argument against reparations.
And I feel like, because a lot of people are saying like, oh, it should be like a lump sum of money, or it should be like, something about like ease of jobs or whatever. Giving a lump sum of money to any community based on just, you guys deserve it. Not saying it's like, oh, it's because you can't give it to African Americans. No, if you gave any group, just a sum of money.
Southern whites. We gave Southern whites a shit ton of money because we killed their ancestors in the Civil War.
It would be the worst decision that they could make for that group to get them out of a bad area, especially the poverty that a lot of African Americans live in. I take no pleasure in addressing that African Americans live in a lot of poverty in this country. I think that's awful. I don't like poverty anywhere in this country. That's why we were so angry about giving money to all these countries that aren't going to use it in the proper way. Giving money to people who are in that lower echelon, especially a lot of money like that, I would say around like between 5 and 10% of those people are going to take that money and they're going to then establish a healthy system that's going to keep them and their families out of poverty.
Yeah, it's going to benefit them.
Yes, I feel like 95% of any impoverished group, if you just give them a lump sum of money and say, here, yeah, you deserve it, get out of poverty.
Let me ask you, why is that?
Well, let me finish. They would spend it on something they want, like shinies.
Shinies. Well,
newest iPhone, newest cars. They would buy a lot of things, and then it wouldn't sustain. And yes, that does branch to education, and it's a super bad loop cycle. Education, I feel like, in this country really needs to be reworked. I feel like it shouldn't be as dependent on locality as it is. I feel like there should be a teachers union where all teachers are educated out of the same couple of specific education schools on how to educate, and then they are shipped from those schools across the country where they are needed, and they have tenure rules, and they have rules like you have to stay in a certain place for a certain amount of time. There's a lot of legwork that needs to be done, but I feel like it with the whole locality of it, and we're in Massachusetts. We are fortunate enough to be in the most educated state in the union.
Mm-hmm.
You have Mississippi, which is the least educated state in the union. And it's not like it's going to flip around and jump up 20 places or jump up to the top. It's a perpetuating cycle where bad education breeds bad education.
Yep.
Good education breeds good education. That's why Massachusetts and Connecticut are constantly 1 and 2, constantly going back and forth, because there's a cycle at play. We have to be able to break the cycle. And I feel like that cycle of bad education in bad areas is just because of locality. I feel like if you made a super
about access.
A super small group of schools that trained every teacher and then completely redo how teaching works.
I agree.
Completely redo teacher benefits, redo salaries, redo how easy it is to get rid of teachers if they're an underperforming kind of a thing.
Yeah, good luck getting that through the union. See, that's the thing. Okay, listen. I did a couple of months as a first grade teacher at a local elementary school. I got my associate's degree. I was allowed to do it. I got all the paperwork done and did all the fingerprints.
That's why you didn't do it illegally, Josh.
Well, hey, you know what, dude? I wouldn't put it past some people to try.
We were all worried we were getting a torrent version of elementary school education.
They just let me in. They let me in the classroom, and there was just no one in there to stop me.
And you're like, where are your first graders? I'll teach them.
Yeah, that's how that works. But anywho,
Anyone don't know how to read? I got you. I know how to read.
But I did this, and it really taught me that I was teaching a 17-person class of first graders during COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the standardized testing that schools will put on different grades of kids, it really wasn't the same. So I was allowed more freedom in my education for the kids. And it was really great because now I got to open them to different ideas. And it wasn't like, hey, you're learning to memorize these facts to pass this test to go to this college. No, it's I'm your teacher. I am passionate about this subject that happens to be within the within the branches of history or philosophy, political philosophy or social philosophy in the ties and in the context of history. Obviously, I didn't teach that to those kids. They're first grade. They're not going to understand that. But they were able to I taught them what philosophy was. I used the ancient Greeks. We had really cool coloring things. It was a really, really great. It was a really, really great time. And I feel like you're right that the education system should be revamped, and especially with standardized testing. The SATs were put in place during World War II. This was another thing Andrew Yang said all the time. The SATs were put in place during World War II to see who would go to the front lines and who wouldn't. Out of high school kids would be forced to take this test. They would be drafted into the United States military, and if you scored bad on that SAT, have fun at Okinawa. Good luck.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. What an amazing first episode. Thanks for everybody Thanks for everyone who wanted to tune in and check us out. We're going to be doing this every weekend at 10 o'clock. We still have a couple minutes. Anyone want to give a quick 30 to 45 second closing remarks?
I think this is a really awesome experience. I think that the best part about the internet and about platforms like this is that it gets away from the mainstream narrative and the mainstream influence of huge monetary profit. I don't know a lot about, the different broadcasting sites that we're on. All I know is that we're on them, but I'm very thankful that I get to be a part of a program that isn't just profit driven and forcing things down our throat. And I could talk about the FBI with Governor Whitmer, and you could talk about, different prices of housing and things like that. And we could talk about all these crazy things. I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Jack. And thank you everybody for coming and listening in, whether you're here live with us now on this Sunday morning, or whether you're listening to the eventual VODs of this all over the internet.
Exactly, all over the world. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We are a little bit new at this. We're going to be setting things up and learning as we go along. We're definitely going to be setting up social media accounts between now and next week's episode. When we have everything finalized, we're going to be telling you guys where you can contact us, send us political questions, send us political theories. And if we like them, we'll talk about them on the show. We're going to keep doing this every Saturday night, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, depending on if we can get the bigger time slot. Everybody have a great night. This is the Political Zoo with Josh and Drew signing off.
Later, everybody.